we were in St. George and that type of thing.
Down in your place.
Yeah.
Have you seen the temple? Come up out of the ground.
Oh, no. The branch office down there, shop for a hardware company. Hopefully that goes all right.
I got a feeling that you'll be plenty busy.
Because right now we're just spending money.
Did you get that? Did you happen to get that?
I don't know. I mean, he said he had some offers, but I haven't.
So it showed up on the MLS as under contract for like 3 days, and then it switched back to available. So
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Are you thinking?
we are, but we're not. You know, I mean, it's a great neighborhood. We love that neighborhood. Holy
It is
cow, how bad
amazing.
is your backyard? But I think we're always looking. We're just not quite. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh.
It has a dance studio in the basement, and
Oh, really?
your girls are into dance, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. There
So
you
like
go.
there's a little basement apartment dance. I don't think it's a full accessory, but like a mother-in-law type. Yeah. and it's-
Our mayor is running just a couple minutes late, so give us just a few minutes here, folks. Thank you.
Nature,
Something
what you
decent on
think?
yours. You probably could get something great.
Excuse me. Admiral Halsey notified me he had to have a battle he couldn't get to see. Well, that is gonna be cool. Is it just you and your wife?
No, it's kind of a business thing, so, I mean, not work, but,
No, I understand. Yeah. I know how taxes work.
well, no, this is actually a trip from a vendor from 2019. And then COVID, yeah. Yeah, they came and said, if, you know, so we paid them an awful lot of money during, buying product.
Do you know where you used to? Well, of course you do.
I don't know if I ever say it, but it's Olaf Properties, it's on the west side, Colina. I think that would be kind of fun.
That's cool.
Does the acoustic fence go on the regular fence, or is it goes on the regular fence?
Yeah, we'll be gone for a week, so.
It requires a bigger, heavier,
Thomas in
like, it's
October,
pretty
maybe
weighty,
September.
Well, I don't know if he was gonna try Acoustifence or something else, since Acoustifence is really expensive. Yeah, he was thinking he'd try that out and then see how that plays out before.
How long you gonna be there? Because like I said, make sure you pop over to St. John's. Yeah, we popped over to St. John's. Oh, yeah. That's actually, it was a stop on a cruise and we got off to the ferry, went to St. John's. Incredible.
There's 6 ports on Locust that are going into PG. Those neighbors across are wondering how they'll.
They are so close, right? I mean,
I mean, we have the folks here that worry about it.
You went over to
Right, yeah.
You step on the sand, this thing is so soft.
We felt kind of bad. There was a woman walking around. This was right after the hurricane.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Earn some money.
Time to earn some money, so indulged.
You turn 60.
Month to go?
No, September.
you staying down there? Or do you have a place down there?
I don't anymore right now, so my aunt passed away.
When you were younger?
Okay, her place.
Yeah. And my mom has a place, but she's got full-time renters in it right now. So, yeah, we're just staying in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you.
Do you want to?
Yeah, let's get this started.
Sure, but it's
Help?
just,
I'm good.
It's hard to miss that much work, let alone throw in 2 days.
Okay, welcome everyone. We are going to get started. The mayor is late for the first time ever. I've been doing this for 7 years and never once has he been late. So I'm currently serving as the mayor pro tem, and we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm Jake Hoyt. I'll be conducting our invocation. We have a special invocation today by Rajan Zed, President of Universal Society of Hinduism. After which we will have our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Chief if you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Rajan, we'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you. My hearty thanks to Mayor Jeff Aserson, council members, Administrator Coy for scheduling me to read the invocation for the great city of Lindon. I shall be reading in Sanskrit from ancient Hindu scriptures, some as old as 1500 BCE, and then interpret in English. Om Bhurvubhah Swah Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Maybe all rise, please. We meditate on the transcendental glory of the Deity Supreme, who is inside the heart of the earth, inside the life of the sky, and inside the soul of the heaven. May he stimulate and illuminate our minds. Astoma Sadgamya Tamsoma Jyotirgamya Mrityor Mamratam Gamya. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Tasmada Sakta Satam Karyam Karma Samachara Asakto Hai Charan Karma Parma Panoti Purusha Karma Ne Vahi Samsiddhi Mastita Jankadya Loka Sangreha Mevapi Sampa Shankar Tumra Hasi. Strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world by devotion to selfless. One attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. Om Saha Navavatu, Saha Nobnaktu, Saha Viryan Karva Bahai, Tejasvina Vadita Mastu, Ma Vidvisa Bahai. May we be protected together. May we be nourished together. May we work together with great vigor. May our study be enlightening. May no obstacle arise between us. Samni va kuti samna hridayani va samna mastu vo mano yatha vasu sahasti. United your resolve, united your hearts. May your spirits be at one, that you may long together dwell in unity and concord. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om. Thank you.
Thank you. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rajan. We'll let you jump off whenever you are ready, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief, as well. Roll call. We'll start down there with you, Van.
Van Broderick, present.
Mike and Sherry present.
Carolyn Lundberg, present.
Jake Hoyt, present. We'll move to the
Randy,
Hang on.
whoops.
Randy Powell.
Randy Powell, present.
Thank you for joining us, Randy. It's good to see you. We'll jump to approval of the minutes. Our minutes from the City Council meeting of April 5th, 2021. Is there any corrections or changes from anyone on the council?
I don't have any.
I had a chance to review those. They looked great, Kathy. Randy, anything from you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for asking.
I'd make a motion then to approve the City Council minutes of April 5th, 2021.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to presentations and announcements. Do we have Neil Schwindeman with us? Perfect, we'll turn the time over to you. Please come forward.
I'm Neil Schwindeman, new district manager for North Point Solid Waste. I took over for Roger Harper. He retired December 11th, and it's been great. One of the things that the district board has been talking about is a couple different programs that currently Orem City uses, and a different one that I'm familiar with that I used when I was in Washington County. These programs are just on a website. You can see here we have the Orem City website pulled up. Basically, there's a lot of different features that go with it. It is a calendar that you can put information in there about when people's collection days are, when the recycling day is. For example, you could also include, like this month is household hazardous waste, sponsored through the county, that anybody can bring their household hazardous waste to the transfer station, and their electronic waste as well. So just looking at what this can do, the other feature of this is when people have a question about what they can and can't recycle, they can go on and ask questions on these apps as well, or these widgets, whatever you want to call them, on the website. I'm not as familiar with the one Orem is using. If you want to switch over to the Washington County Solid Waste one, I know they all have similar features. So if you look at that box just right there where it says My Schedule, then there's the What Goes Where. You can click on that one. That's where you could actually, in that, just type in styrofoam. Comes up with a lot of different options, and then it tells you what to do with that. Currently in Washington County, there's nowhere to recycle styrofoam, so it needs to just be put in their waste container. Right there it talks about make sure your waste container is placed out at your curb by 6 a.m. I believe yours is at 7 a.m. that it needs to be out. The calendar portion of that probably isn't as needed in Lindon as some of the other cities that have multiple days of pickup. I believe yours is all collected on Fridays. But if you have a every other week service for recycling, I don't know about you, but I can't ever remember which week I put my recycling can out. So it's always a nice reminder. On this one, scroll up a little bit and go back to that My Schedule. Oh, you're right there. Go ahead and type in 457 East. You can see that addresses start to populate. Go all the way down the bottom, the 457 East 165 in Ivans. That's my former address, but if you click search on that, right there is telling you can sign up for free reminders. Every Monday I had signed up, and every Sunday night I would get a text message saying, hey, tomorrow's your trash day, tomorrow's your recycling day, and trash. When you put that in, you can see that there's a calendar that pops up right there, which days are the recycling and the waste. So you can click on that box up there, get a reminder, get a calendar. You could search for another address. If you scroll up just a little bit more, we put some messages in there. That was the Monday light blue schedule. It's no longer collected by two different services. They need to update that, but because Republic Services actually purchased Dixie Waste. But that's a feature that residents can use to go on and find out when their trash is. A great service, especially if someone is new. So we've been looking at both. This one that you're seeing on Washington County's website is called Recollect. The one on Orem's is Recycle Coach, and you can see that they're a little bit different look and feel to them. Both of them have the ability to have an app that people could put on their phone. The other thing that I was able to do with Recollect is I could send out a campaign. I could go and put a campaign that would run for a whole week. So like the 4th of July, I would always put out, hey, remember to soak your fireworks for 24 hours before you put them in your garbage can. Because if not, your garbage can is probably going to start on fire. So we would run different campaigns. I was able to manage the whole backside of Recollect and change the different polygons. So if somebody's service address changed or whatnot, I could go in and I could quickly manage those. I know that Recycle Coach likes to kind of take that charge, and you just have someone send them information and they'll go on and do it. Because the way Washington County was set up and organized, it was one hauler for the entire county. And so it was easy for me to manage that for all 14 cities. The other thing that you can do is send out a mass email blast to let people know, hey, if we had a problem with a certain area and we're not going to get your trash today, you could send out just a notice to them to let them know. So those are some of the features that these apps can have.
Would that have been, sorry to interrupt, was that a targeted email to it only go to the customers that
Yes, yeah.
the service was going to be interrupted?
I could pick and choose which certain areas I could send those emails to. The only bad part about that is it would only go to people that had actually signed up and were utilizing the service. I know Orem has said they have roughly about 30% of their city that is on and using the Recycle Coach app. And like I said, they have a bunch of features and whatnot. As far as, I think they might have some little games. On Recollect, you can do some little games. So as far as the research from the district and the district kind of promoting this, I got some pricing. The best pricing actually came from Recollect, and for all 9 cities in the district, it would roughly cost about 15 grand a year. I forgot to look up what it was for Lindon City if we were to divide that 15,000 out.
I think it was only like not quite $600.
Yeah, so we
You
looked
base
at
that off of customers per
Users,
city,
yeah.
users per city.
yeah, so it was I think the percentages that I looked at was just strictly a percentage of population, and so then we broke down if each city had to pay their full amount, then this is what each city would have to pay.
Yeah, it was
And-
nominal.
Yeah, it wasn't that much. Some of the larger cities were, maybe 4 or 5 grand, but the smaller cities, didn't have to pay that much. And that's if all the cities had to pay the full amount. There's still potential if there's enough cities that want to go in and do something like this, then, maybe the district would, add to or pay for part of it, and then the cities would do less. And what does that do for the district? The way it benefits the district is we could get messages out about different days that we're having at the transfer station. It helps reduce the number of phone calls to both the city and to the district, people looking and wanting to know what goes where. So those are some options there. So as far as what I need is just for the council to discuss if they think it's something that the city wants and would benefit from, and then get a report back to us so we can make a decision.
In our efforts to, if we decide to do it, in our efforts to utilize the program, would we have the option of sending out a blast email to our citizens regarding recycling and then using some examples of Recollect, like how it might work, or some promotional information on it or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, Recollect is very willing to come in and help out with those type of things as well, and get that word out. If you want to maybe click on that sidebar navigation where it says recycling. I also managed the website for Washington County when I was there, and I put that
Over here?
yeah, just right there. I put that same little thing, scroll down, and you'll see that same box a little bit lower. There was a survey, that same box. I put it in as many places on the website as I could so people knew, they saw it. It was always there. And we were also able to, the cities that cooperated would put it on their website as well. Some cities were more difficult than others, but.
Neil, would you be willing to share with us on the backside, who's responsible for that? How much time does it take?
So
what's the investment in personnel or whatever?
Once it's set up, it's pretty much there. I could always go in and look at a bunch of analytics and statistics about how many people were signed up for text reminders. I could see, you can sign up for a text reminder, you can sign up for a phone call, an email reminder, you can sign up for a Twitter reminder, and so it would show all the different areas and how many people in each area were signed up. As far as someone needing to oversee it, if the city didn't want to do that, Recollect also has their customer service people that would be willing to jump on and help make some of those changes as well.
So this is not just recycling, it would be all waste management, messaging, and
Correct.
community outreach. And then does it depend on the community opting in and providing, kind of signing up their techs, or is there ways to just work with what's already in our database of customers or users?
You mean the city signing up all your residents for them, or?
The messaging, the opportunities, the different features it has, is it reliant on the community signing up for it individually?
Well, each community in the district, we're looking to get that support to know if we want to move forward with it. The cities could actually go out and get Recollect or Recycle Coach on their own if they wanted to. But I think in order for it to work right and for you to have the information that is pertinent to your residents, the city would need to be heavily involved in it.
But initially, though, we would just send it out, as I understand it, to the number of recycle customers, if that's the right word.
You could send it out to,
to inform them, but we could send it out in a general blast
absolutely.
to the entire city and say, if you're interested, the city can provide this service to you.
Yeah.
That's an option.
So we would need, like, your Recollect or Recycle Coach would need your database to put into the system, so when people went and searched for their address, it would populate. At first, the difficult thing I saw was there was so much growth in Washington County that any new address, a lot of times people couldn't see, and then I was trying to go on and add those, but then I worked with the county GIS department, and once a month it would just add all the new addresses right to the system. I don't know what the situation for Lindon would be, how many new homes you have a month that would potentially need that. I could go on and I could add addresses and put them in a certain area. As far as all of yours, people could just put in any address because everybody's on Friday and it would pop up and see. And then they could click on get a reminder, put in their phone number, receive text messages. So. Any other questions?
Are you looking for an answer today?
I don't need an answer today. My next board meeting I'll probably be discussing this is going to be in June. So take your time, get back with Mike.
We'll get back with you, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to know if there's some of the bigger cities give a thumbs up and.
So, yeah, you're the second city I've been to. I started with Lehigh, and they were very interested in it from what it sounded like, just meeting with the council. So, yeah, I'm curious to see who all is interested and who isn't. That 15,000 currently includes Orem. I know Orem is with Recycle Coach, and they're probably going to be with them for a couple more years. I think they have a contract with them. But I guess what I'm trying to say is if Orem, decided to jump from Recycle Coach and go to Recollect at some point in time, it's not going to increase the price. It's already included in that 15 grand a year.
Jake?
Yep.
Can you, maybe I missed this because sometimes it's cutting in and out. Was there a duration in which if we did commit that we would need to contract basically with, as the group, as this interlocal agreement would be, so to speak?
Typically, what I got from Recollect when I started, it was a 3-year agreement. So that's pretty standard, is a 3-year commitment. I can go back and, see if it was just a 1 year, if they would need to increase their price or not. Most of their costs are all gonna be associated up front, setting up the database and getting it ready to roll. So.
You could give us.
Thank you.
You could give us some statistics on how successful it is in other cities and what their thoughts are about using it.
Yeah, we can get Bren from Orem to give us those statistics. I can get information from Washington County and so forth, if that would be helpful.
I think that would be helpful, just a little more information, and I think we can make that decision. But, no, we appreciate you coming out here. I know Mike was heavily involved in that decision-making and feels really comfortable, so.
All right. Well, thank you.
Unofficial survey. A lot of people here. How many would like to have that on their phone and would load the app to get a reminder?
At no cost.
Well, it would be a cost to the city, but which is essentially you. But so just curious. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a scientific poll.
Yeah. The district will subsidize some of the cost, though. That's good to know.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Mayor Pro Tem, so I took the reins. We're just through item 3B. We're at item 4, and I'll turn the reins back over to you.
I'm surprised. I thought we'd be done.
I should have had it done. Let you down.
So I'm not the slow cog in the wheel here, right? Okay. So we are on 3B. We just finished the 3B, right?
Finished 3B.
Okay. Council reports. Jake, you want to start us off?
I'd love to start.
Please.
Yep. Just have a couple of quick announcements from our Parks and Rec department. Arbor Day this month. The city is putting on a tree photo contest right now. Take a picture of a Lindon tree with a Lindon resident in the picture. Send it into the contest. There's a few different age groups. There'll be 4 winners. Each winner will get a tree voucher worth up to $250. I know my kids are very excited about this. They've been taking pictures of all sorts of trees. So really a fun contest that our Parks and Rec department puts on. So more information about that on our website if you're interested. We've got soccer starting this week. Shade structures going up in the pool. We are having our seniors coming back inside at our senior center on May 1st. It's been over a year, so it's so good to have them coming back in and having things heading in the right direction there. And last but not least, Alan Walker, who we all know and love, was nominated and voted in as the aquatics representative for the Utah State Recreations and Park Association, which Heath wanted me to know that is a very big deal. So I don't know that we're all very familiar with that association, but to have one of ours on there is a pretty big deal, and they're pretty proud of him. So anyways, that's our very own Alan Walker. And really, besides the convention this week, ULCT, and a couple of chamber events that I had the opportunity to attend, I don't know that I have anything else to discuss.
All right, Carolyn?
Yeah, Jake and I were both at the last PG Lindon Chamber event. They had Jeanette Bennett with Utah Valley Magazine was the keynote speaker. And our own Mayor Acerson is featured in the current edition, I believe. So I know he wouldn't like me to probably announce that, but it was a fun little spiff on him. So different people with all different backgrounds.
Yeah, the best part of that was the cover, and that wasn't me. That was the Candy Bomber.
Yes.
And he deserved every inch that was there. It was great.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's see. That's about all I have. We have we're chatting more about how to incorporate at the chamber some different cool things for our Lindon Days coming up. Strawberry Days is coming up. They're going to hold everything pretty much as usual. They're going to I know last year all the cities did some extreme modifications with COVID, and they're hopefully looking forward to holding most of their events as they traditionally have, and so we'll kind of see how that goes. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, Mike?
Yes, we have been working as a board for the North Point Solid Waste Services District to introduce this concept, the recycling software. And the thing I'm most excited about is, number one, it hopefully will encourage more people to recycle. And number two is the cost is so nominal. I mean, it's virtually transparent. So I know we'll talk about it a little bit more, but and in regards to Neil taking over as the director there, he comes with a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge, very well respected in the industry, and we've got a good leader for a good long time. So we feel very good about that. So
good.
The other thing is, this is not I'm not over Parks and Rec per se, like, I'm not the liaison, but I think I mentioned to you last time the sign up on the horse trail up on 12th East, and that looks really, really good. They got it all done. They got new metal lettering on it, and when you drive up there, you can see it really, really good, and it looks very attractive. We appreciate that.
Now, have you taken a horse up there lately? That's the invite for you to.
Have a horse with no name.
Okay.
They have a name with no horse. Should be done. So, yeah, but they've done a very, very good job. There's not a whole lot. I had the privilege of having lunch with the chief here a couple of weeks ago, and he was kind enough to fill me in on a lot of things and get an idea of what kinds of things that, as a councilman, I would like to see or hear. Like, not necessarily get a cat out of a tree, but if we have a missing citizen or whatever, that's kind of thing. And no, not Jason. So we're very blessed, I think, to have Chief. Chief Brower does a great job, and so it's good to have him here. So really, that's all I have.
Good. Okay, Van.
Just a thank you. We've had the city responding, almost everybody on our city staff responding to a high pressure concern. The administrator, public works director, water superintendents, current and past, and so I appreciate the prompt information. I'm liking the solution that's coming there, and Juan was going to talk to that individual today, and I was going to as well. But I think that's a good solution that they've come up with. So it's some really high water pressure that's gone back and forth over the years. And the option of putting in a PRV valve is very, very costly. So there's some things that looks like it'll be made available to the residents to be reimbursed if they're worried about that. But mostly kudos to the city for the prompt response and checking into it, and public engineer as well. One other thing, Chief, when you finish getting that chair, do you want to give us any update you feel might be comfortable, that you feel comfortable doing with things we're doing for Minnesota and what's going on there and what may happen and what types of things? Not to put you on the spot, sorry, but you were telling me about that earlier today.
Yeah, a little bit on the spot. That's all right. No, as everybody nationwide is a little on edge about the verdict that may be coming down and how that's going to impact safety in a lot of the bigger cities, but also locally. We do know of some potential protests heading to Provo, but Lindon seems to be off the radar, thankfully. As far as just the police department, we're just ensuring that we receive intel and making sure we're acting appropriately and keeping our officers safe, just mindful of the potential environment. So it's kind of where we're at.
All right, thank you. And kudos there too, for as small as we are, those types of things can impact our city, and I like the preparation and coordination that our local police do and with the county, so thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Randy, you want to go ahead and make your report?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mayor. Not a lot to report, but just want to make sure we recognize that very soon Donna Hackey will be retiring. I think it's not something for me to rejoice about, but I'm so happy for her. And another long-term valuable employee as being able to retire, and we're so grateful for all that she's done for us. And I'm sure Adam will be able to fill us in on when the time frame is that we're going to honor her as staff. And but we also have a new employee, and her name is Rebecca. And she will be taking Donna's place, and I'm sure Adam will also fill us in a little bit more on that information. I'm a little bit handicapped being so many miles away. But also, two other items of business that don't have anything to do really with my assignments. One would be my grandson, Titan, would like everyone to know he really appreciates the garage doors at the fire station being repainted and wants us to acknowledge how beautiful they are. So thank you to Alex Roylance. I think he was the one that spearheaded that. And we love that refresh on that. Another sad note, though, is that in our sister city, American Fort, a longtime wonderful citizen there, and also a sitting council member passed away on April 2nd. American Fort Class. Barbara Christensen was I spent time when I was on the North County outreach board at the American Fork Hospital, serving with Barbara Christensen, a fabulous woman who served our community with wonderful articles with the Daily Herald for years that I can't even begin to count. And I got to know her there, and just the most delightful woman, and just a sad thought about American Fork losing one of their sitting council members. So just want to acknowledge her at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Adam, you want to?
Just a reminder for council, if you can get closer to your mic, that helps significantly on those watching online on YouTube. So that really helps. Thank you. Just an FYI with our secondary water update, Juan let me know today that they plan to be filling the lower reservoir over the next 2 to 3 days. And then from there, they'll be pumping that water up to our upper reservoir. And so over the next week and a half or so, some areas of town will slowly start getting pressure irrigation, secondary irrigation. We hope to have the entire city, from what we've understood from North Union Canal, they'll be sending water through their aqueduct system the end of next week. And so we hope to have all of that ready to go by the 1st of May there. So just an FYI, it's being worked on. There's a light at the end of that tunnel. So we listed there the information on the election coming up and those positions and the dates. Just a reminder on anyone going to that League of Cities and Towns conference, just to submit your receipts for reimbursement for any of that fuel, lodging, or meals not provided by that conference. At our next meeting, May 3rd, is our budget work session, and then also we'll adopt the tentative budget. That's kind of our rough draft on the budget. The current budget is available on our city website. If you wanted to look through that before getting the staff report information, you're welcome to download that and refresh. Overall, we're in a very good financial position. One of our best years since I've been at Lindon City. Good revenues that are coming in, and we've received last year that COVID money, but then anticipating big stimulus funding that's coming to all the cities, over $1 million. It's got some caveats on what you can use that for. It's primarily infrastructure related. So some of our improvements on Center Street, some of our water needs, those may be good candidates for some of that one-time money. So we'll talk more about that. But overall, a very good outlook on our financial status as a city. Let's see, and then Randy, you asked, just for clarification on that, retirement open house for Donna. That is Friday, April 30th at 2 o'clock. So, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Between 2 to 4?
Yes, between 2 and 4.
That's also our Arbor Day celebration.
Thank you, Council, for your reports, and Adam. We've arrived at the agenda on the open session, so anyone that's here to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda, now would be the time if you're here to do that. Anyone? Okay, I think we're okay then. Let's go ahead and move on. We don't have any consent agenda items. So item number 8 is the public hearing for General Platte Street Master Plan Map Amendment. And so we'll need to open a public hearing.
I make a motion to open a public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Van, a second by Mike. Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now in a public hearing.
Mayor, as I've done in the past on this item, I will be recusing myself.
Okay.
Potential conflicts of interest, and I'll step out.
Okay, Mike, are you running the show on this one?
I am. Thank you, Mayor and council members. So I'm going to give a kind of an overview of the applications this evening. So this item and then the next item for the zone change are both associated, but I'm going to give just one presentation. And then the applicants are here this evening to go in more detail on their proposals. So the applicants have applied for a zone map amendment to, let me go to a map really quick. So they're petitioning to rezone the northwest corner of the property at 550 North State Street from Commercial General to Commercial General A. That is 1.97 acres for Rhino Realty. So this would be for Lowbook to expand their dealership. And then they've also petitioned for the planned residential development overlay to go over the entire 13.43 acres. So what you're hearing tonight is for a zone map amendment. Then the second item is for to amend the general plan. So the applicants have filed an application to cul-de-sac 570 North at the end of the street there. Currently 570 North dead ends. The Lindon City General Plan, Street Master Plan map has envisioned 570 North connecting to State Street. And so the Planning Commission gave recommendations on both these items. For the zone change, they recommended approval on a 5-to-1 vote. On the general plan amendment, they recommended denial, meaning that basically they're recommending that 570 connect to State Street. So they recommended denial of that item to the City Council. Go to the So here's the site plan that the applicants have submitted with their application. They're proposing, again, that the Lowbook cells expand on this portion of the property. And then they're proposing 4 new commercial buildings, 3 fronting State Street or access from State Street, and then 1 on 500 North. So the total commercial portion is 1.97 acres for the Lowbook cells expansion and 3.79 acres for this commercial area. The townhomes that they're also proposing is 72 townhomes and 4 single-family homes, which equals about 7.6 acres. So the total site's again just over 13.4 acres. Going back just to the Planning Commission's recommendation on the Planning Commission, again, they voted 5-to-1 on the zone change. They also recommended that the council look at the following items: a decrease in density as to allow for more open space and common areas and facilities, and to increase the buffer/transition between the residential homes on 570 North to the development. Since the Planning Commission made that recommendation, the applicant has submitted an updated plan that it reduced the size of these 2 single-family homes here, and then provided more open space, some common open space in this area.
That was a reduction in the lot size, right?
In the lot size, yeah. So I think some of the townhomes that were right here, because they reduced the lot size of these single-family homes and moved those townhomes over here to create that common open space. The density for the townhomes is 9.9 units per acre. They do meet the 300-foot setback, so the ordinance requires that the first 300 feet of State Street be commercial to keep with the intent of the commercial general zoning there, to encourage commercial uses. Let's see, just some more specifics. They meet the parking requirements. Each home is a 2-car garage, each townhome and single-family home, 2-car garage, 2 two vehicles on the driveway. There's 19 visitor parking stalls within the development as well. A couple just renderings, and the developer will go into more detail. These are renderings for the commercial buildings. And then they'll go into more detail as well as on the renderings for the townhomes. Going back to the site plan, they do meet the requirement for the required 20% open space. They have a combination of both private rear yards, 30-foot rear yards for majority of those townhome units, and then this common open space. So their total open space percentage is 28%. Yeah, that's 28%. Let's see, there is a 7-foot masonry wall that separates the townhomes wherever they touch an R1 or single family uses.
So does that go all on the east side there?
Yes.
All the way across, okay.
It does. That east side, the north side. I don't think it goes along the south boundary with the church. Is that correct, Amy? Okay. And it does go along, does it go along the commercial, between the commercial and single family?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, except for you said you wanted it to be a little bit open on a certain part, so.
Just where the townhomes
Right.
are.
Yeah.
Okay. Street width, you can see the street section here. So the ordinance requires 29 feet of asphalt. So that's what they've provided. Then your 2-foot curb and gutter on each side, and then you'll have sidewalk on each side of the street as well. The applicants have provided a traffic study. I would prefer to let the traffic engineer go through that, his findings for that, if that's okay. I don't know, Amy, if you'd like to do that now or during your presentation.
We can do it. Well, we can, is he on, you said he's not
Yes,
on
he just
here?
hasn't started his camera
Oh, okay.
or his microphone, so.
Or, I mean, he's
There we
happy
go.
to talk, or, yeah, he can talk now, or he can go towards questions that the council might have. I
Might be
don't know.
good for him to go ahead and present his
Okay,
findings.
go ahead, Brian.
Good evening, council. The traffic study went through a couple of iterations. When it was first, this plan was first presented, we're not proposing the cut through of 570. So the full traffic study goes over the results and conclusions if that connection does not exist. The findings from that study showed that all proposed entrances would function at acceptable levels of service and queues. There was a question at that time about side street levels of service F coming out onto State Street. And further review of the analysis showed that there was no queuing issue, and that was more of a function of the analysis software showing inflated levels of service. So the traffic study was updated when, after the first planning commission, when they requested to see a more balanced distribution of trips, and also assuming that the connection at 570 would go through. So I provided a updated distribution that shows a much heavier weighted percentage of trips heading to the east. This is not what we would typically provide in terms of analysis. This is a little more heavily weighted to lower functional classifications of roadways. But the attempt was to show that even in the event that this rezoning would show a significant portion of traffic to the east, that trip generation was still generally low, and that all of the study intersections would operate well within acceptable levels of service and queues. There was a lot of discussion around traffic, so happy to answer any and all questions that may come up related to that. I would like to note that we did provide the town a comparison of what this site would generate as a by right commercial use versus the proposed mixed use development, and provided that an all commercial development would be about 129% more traffic than the currently proposed uses.
So,
Can I ask a question?
Questions? Yes, please, go ahead, Carolyn.
These percentages are representative of residential and commercial use here, or just the residential?
Correct. These percentages are of the total site.
And are they representative of like a total number of trips per day, or is it saying it's 20% more than current, 30% more than current? I'm trying to understand the parameter.
These are distributions, so they add up to 100%. And these are peak hour trips. So we study worst case scenario. So these are the AM and PM peak hour trips showing the full total traffic that would be seen during the AM and PM peak hour in 2026.
So you have a distribution of the peak movement. Do you have a number of trips per day figure that you're basing your data off of?
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, I'll speak in the microphone better. Do you have a trips per day number that is a data point here?
No, the traffic study provided the ADT of the site. We do kind of a quick look at ADTs when we go through this process to see if any of the roadways would be too small of a section, let's say, to handle the traffic, and none were identified. So there's no graphic that shows the ADTs.
there's not a graphic, but it did call out 951 trips. So that would be what, 400 and total trips over a 24-hour period. So essentially that'd be 475 over a 24-hour period leaving and 475 returning. Is that correct, Brian?
Mm-hmm. Correct. The total site would add 950 trips approximately to the surrounding network.
Inbound and outbound.
Inbound and outbound over a 24-hour period. Correct.
Yep.
So would you determine that the inbound returning to the residential will use State Street more heavily than the interior neighborhood streets, most likely?
Correct. When we determine distributions, and again, this is a little over-representative of traffic to the east. Traffic tends to be oriented towards the highest functional classification of street, which is obviously State Street, Highway 89. But we wanted to provide at least an analysis to show if for some reason there was traffic oriented to the east, that the network would still be able to support that.
So I think, Brian, maybe you could talk about the peak hours for a few minutes, what that highest demand is.
Sure. So when we do these traffic studies, our first consideration is that will the traffic signals still work, and that will side streets be able to enter the network safely and efficiently, mostly due to what I would consider a lower trip generation and the commercial being oriented towards State Street. The majority of the traffic will be oriented to State Street, and the signals, I don't have the results in front of me, but I believe the signals all operate levels of service, B or better, which is exceptional. Side streets didn't show any queuing issues, so our conclusion was that if you were trying to make a left out onto State Street, you would approach a stop sign with nobody on it, find a gap created by the signals, and be able to get out onto State Street. As you can see from those peak hour numbers, particularly along 570, on the graphic, we're showing 4 a.m. inbound trips and 5 AM outbound trips along 570. So it's that first number is your AM peak. The second number is your PM peak. So 6 in and out going along 570 during peak hours, if the connection was be opened.
Just a couple of questions, if I could. You talk about State Street being the main draw. I know when we're raising our family and kids, I'm going to the elementary school, junior high, I'm going to the schools, which is going to take everything east. Is that factored into your analysis, if you will?
So those draws are considered. The majority of the traffic is residential in nature, and the AM peak hour would have some percentage of the townhomes going to those schools. Our trip generation accounts for those trip generation characteristics. So, like, not every townhome is going to have a child going to school. Some might work an overnight shift. Traffic is, characteristic of other townhome communities that were studied.
I guess I'm going to ask that question a little bit differently. Do you base it on where the schools are located currently, where the natural flow is? Is that part of your analysis?
Correct. Yeah, we take a look at all of the draws. So anything non-residential would be a draw from the residential portion of the development. So that would be schools and anything non-res. So churches are included, employment centers, retail. They're all factored into what might possibly happen during with this rezoning.
Just one other follow-up question on traffic studies. How much follow-up do you do where do you come back and ever measure actual trip charges based on what your projections were? This is a roundabout way of saying how good are you?
Well, the trip generation source that we use is national, and it's been proved and updated time and time again. It's the source that every traffic engineer in the country uses. And then typically we're not called back unless there's a problem or some major change. I have yet to be called back because there was a problem or I was grossly inaccurate.
But have you ever done any testing afterwards to see if your projections, to see how close they were?
Yeah. I would say a situation comes up maybe once a year, once every couple of years, where a data collection effort is undertaken, and it proves the estimates that we assumed initially.
So do you generate that, or does that take a complaint usually to drive that follow-up?
Those are typically handled by the public agencies. So a city or a locality may put out an RFP to study an area that they feel is an issue. So I've gone out there to get counts and provide recommendations for improvements. For instance, if this site had a concern about cut-through traffic, we would go out there and take counts after the site is built to really understand the characteristic of it and figure out if there were, speeding or traffic concerns. There's very little chance that there'd be a capacity concern with this proposed development. Even if the entire site used 570 as their only means of ingress and egress, I know it probably doesn't sound like it out loud, but the roadway would actually be sufficient to carry that much traffic. I wouldn't recommend it, but the site doesn't generate enough traffic to kind of cause major issues.
I have one more question, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
These figures is this, as we know, pre-COVID, most people went to the office. If they were working professional, they went to a place of employment, and there's more trip generation. During COVID, more people have transitioned to remote work or working from home. And going forward in the future, it appears that there's going to be more of a hybrid potential. And so, these numbers, is there a presumption of trips for the working professionals pre-COVID or future hybrid, work from home some days a week, work at the office some days a week, maybe work all the time at home? What's the presumption here, or the underlying data?
So the traffic study is an attempt to analyze worst case scenario. So we take no reductions for work from home. We take no reductions for if there was a bus. We take no reductions for if there were carpool programs, which in some larger studies we would sort of take those reductions. This is an assumption that everybody drives, and this is like COVID never happened. So the worst case scenario for single occupancy vehicles.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. I just appreciate a few clarifications. I heard what you said. I want to make sure that I'm understanding it clearly. So you're suggesting that in terms of ingress to the development, the majority of that you're saying is going to be off of State Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
And would you anticipate majority of that being more commercial? I mean, it makes sense to me that obviously the commercial portion of it would be off of State Street, but does that include the townhouses and the single-family units?
Correct. We would assume that, people, new owners of townhomes are going to need to get to, employment centers. And so the majority of traffic would be oriented to the highest functional classification of streets. So that's both the commercial and the residential will be oriented to State Street.
Okay, and you suggested, correct me if I'm wrong, but you suggested that the worst case scenario would be maybe 8 incoming and outgoing on 570 North. Have I stated that correctly?
This graphic is showing 9 a.m. trips on, so that 4 plus that 5, and 12 in the p.m., so going in both directions. That represents 20% of the site traffic using 570.
Thank you.
Yep.
Randy, do you have questions you want to ask?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Also, thank you to my fellow council members for asking such wonderful and articulate questions that represents a lot of the things that were on my list. So I'm at a disadvantage to be able to participate from this afar, but it's important for us to vet this, especially this portion of this presentation very well. And so I appreciate the presentation that's been given thus far, but I would make it clear that I feel like this is very important to do this on a scientific basis, but at the same time, I feel like the lingo and the language is very esoteric in the fact that we're dealing with streets that people live on and being impacted by this. And I know that the room is full of citizens that are here representing their concerns or to express their concerns and have them alleviated, and to use our terms in such a way that are, for lack of a better term, a little heady and sterile for what's happening. I wish that we could have a conversation that was both knowledgeable and industry appropriate, but also a little bit more a layman in nature. So I appreciate the questions that my fellow council members have articulated so far. Also, I would like, as a follow-up, what was the timeline or gathering data? Was it on multiple occasions, or I know that a lot of the residents there are going to be concerned of knowing what the timeline in the gathering of the information being. Is it relevant or being affected by COVID with the streets quieter as the information was gathered, and was that put into the formula?
Sure, yeah. I'd have to look up the exact date, but all the traffic counts were collected on the same day to give a kind of a snapshot picture of what we would call a typical day. And then that data was compared to, so UDOT collects data every year. And what has been typical practice over the last couple of years is to compare recently collected traffic counts with that historic data to make sure it's in alignment. And we found that it was in alignment with what we call pre-COVID conditions. So we did that kind of sensitivity test to make sure we weren't underrepresenting the traffic out there.
Thank you. But would that be the majority of that along State Street, Highway 89, Or would that be on the interior surface streets of 500, 570, and 600?
We did a traffic count at intersection 5, as well as intersection 4, to understand what the traffic coming off of 500 was. And the original proposal did not include the connection of 570, so it wasn't originally part of the study. There was a discussion of what opening up that connection meant for the master plan, but there wasn't an analysis done of intersections along there.
So you mentioned the intersection of 5 and what you just said right there. I'm assuming that some of the residents there along 500 are concerned that the data was retrieved during COVID when trips to and from the church and whatnot in that area were highly underestimated or recorded. And so how would we try to rectify that and trying to make it relevant for the study?
We could do an exercise where we increased the number of trips coming off of that side street to show that, our concern along 500 would be whether or not people could make the movement out onto State Street. We did a review of the kind of, and I'll try not to get too heady, but maybe how far off, how much traffic we would have to add before things started to fail. And the analysis that we have showed that we're about 20% of the capacity of the intersections. So we would have to multiply the existing traffic by like 4 or 5 to show things to start to fail. I'd be very comfortable saying that even if you increase the existing traffic to kind of show an even worse case scenario, that things would still operate, acceptably.
Thank you. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, council, any more questions or comments before we open up to the public?
Mayor, I just want to turn some time over to the applicant. They've prepared a presentation as well.
Okay. Council, any more comments?
It's just kind of traffic is all we're addressing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Mayor? Mayor?
Go ahead, Randy.
Could I ask a favor? Is that as anyone comes up and speaks, in order for those of us online to hear that we really do access the microphones of some way, and that when Amy is speaking, she could speak close to the microphone as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've been instructed, so you probably need a mic, so.
Steve Johnson from the Planning Commission. I just wanted to point out, because we went through this in depth, and just to verify, I think that those percentages, if I'm correct, Brian, are, the 20% were arbitrary. That isn't study that 20% will go up 500 and 20% will go up 570. Those were just numbers that you generated. And I believe that came out in the Planning Commission. I just wanted to verify that.
You're correct. Those 20% were in an attempt to show sort of an overestimation of traffic going to the side streets, to show that the development as a whole is a pretty low trip generator. So even if we kind of overestimated trips to the residential neighborhood, which again, I think that's an overestimation, that things would still work acceptably. And that was sort of a request, as I understood it, that came out of the first Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Mike, if you want to skip through to Lobuk Cells so he could talk first.
Just make sure you get the mic close.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Chas Felt. I'm here with the Rhino Realty representing Lobuk Cells. I'm their CFO and I office down the street every day. We look forward. We've loved being in Lindon. We've been here for 15 plus years now. And we've just loved the community. It's a great area to be. We love it. And we're just asking that you grant us our request for the zoning change so that we can expand our lot. We've been selling more trucks than we have in the past. And it's really been game changer for us over the last few months. Last month, we had a record month here in Lindon. We sold more trucks than we've ever had before. We sold 130 vehicles in total last month. I know, that's a lot of vehicles. Most of them were trucks. And most of them with trucks have a higher price tag. So when we talked to the City Planning Commission, we talked about that will be a nice addition for Lindon because that'll generate more sales tax than what we have in the past. Because it's all based on the ticket price. The sales tax is based on the sales. And as we have more sales and the cost per vehicle has gone up, we will generate more sales. And trucks take up a lot of area. During the Planning Commission, we had some open comments from the community. The biggest concern was us overflowing into the street. Sometimes we had to have employees park across the street. And that's why we need this option grant, because Low Book Sales needs that extra space so that we can put our trucks out so they can be displayed, so that we can have the inventory that we need to support the sales. And the more inventory we have, that also generates additional sales. So that is our request, and I really don't have much more to say other than we appreciate everything you guys have done for us, but we really need that additional acreage to expand our parking lot and have more vehicles available for sale.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the council? No? Okay.
Okay, so we have, like Mike has said, and Steve Johnson has said, we've really gone through on these roads and figuring out what's best. We took the Planning Commission's advice and everything that they've done. With each revision that we've done, we've come up with about 2 different models from there. So what the plan that you're seeing now is about, I don't even know how many revisions we've done. About 20 revisions. I really feel we're there now in meeting the code, in meeting the guideline, in meeting the overlay, and everything else. So I'll talk to this point as far as commercial-wise. We understand that commercial is super important for you guys, and it's driving, and that you don't want commercial to be an afterthought in this development. That kind of is a design of what we're doing with a drive-through. It can be a drive-through on both sides or drive-through on one side. We have a national tenant that is currently underwriting this, where that star is, next to Low Book Sales. So we're working on that. It would be a similar kind of design there. Obviously, if it's a national tenant, they have their design of what it is, but it'll fit with your guys' guidelines. If you want to go to the other commercial, we'll talk about commercial first. So this one on the front, we've had a really high demand for medical office plaza. So think of that as divided into 4, and because of our need there, we've had a lot of feedback from dentists, orthodontists, a podiatrist, a psychologist. And so a really high-end medical office suite there for in that front. The back section is more of what we'd call modern retail, where those are going to be open spaces. We've talked about this drawing. Again, these are just concepts because what we're talking about today is just for a rezone. We're not talking about final site plan approval or subdivision plan approval or preliminary plat approval. We're just talking about a rezone of commercial. So that back section can possibly change, but where we have found a large interest and we want to propose something that will actually get built and we'll go through and give you guys sales tax and all those things to support Lindon City. That those would be like 6 different units that people can use for whether it's their retail, whether it's we've got a lot of where people have online stores, and so but they still have a boutique space in the front. All different types of use inside of those. So we're really driving into the commercial. We have plans for the medical office. I already have investors and plans for the medical office building in the front. And like I said, the other part, we have a national tenant that's looking at that. We've signed an NDA, so we can't disclose that tenant yet. But understand that we're working just as hard on, and we've already, we've been working with Lobuk Cells to get the other front part for you. So the commercial is definitely not being an afterthought there. We're trying really hard to make sure that that's in place for you. And so here we go. As I said, this final design, the reason why we've kind of opened up 570, we wanted to transition between 570, that's why we put the single family home lots there. So there would be a little bit more of a buffer coming in there. And then we've added basically the loops. The idea there is the townhomes that are facing closest to State Street or back State Street or the commercial, that realistically the easiest route for them would either be to come out 500 North or out State Street. And then the other ones, theirs would be out to 570 or out State Street, or the other ones by the church would go 500. So we've really tried hard to allocate the traffic so it would be an even space for it. We've hit underneath the density. I know the city council had voted for 10 units per an acre for the density, so we've gone underneath that. We're not pushing that. We're not trying at all. Other developments have kind of said, okay, well, this is technically a little bit commercial in this corner, so we want to trade that. We're not doing any of that. We initially had proposed that to start with, but we've just got a straight 300-foot line there, so we're not jumping in the water there at all. Ultimately, I mean, if you go and look for another community that has a townhome with a 30-foot backyard, they're not there. So the fact that these have beautiful big backyards with the open space, we almost feel like it's more like they have their private open space with that large backyard. But we have this, we have a larger spot there too for the community to come together, whether that's a pickleball court or a barbecue place or just an open, or raised garden beds. These are higher end townhomes, so meaning, the price point's going to be in the high 400s. With that, we don't see, it's not, I don't know. It's just going to, I really feel it will be a benefit to the community as far as what's there. Any other questions for me?
I have one, maybe Mike can shed some light on this too. Again, in the way of reminding us, but also helping the good folks that are here. We have the requirement that, 25% of the commercial has to be
correct.
Have to business, building permits, and under construction. Is that correct? And something
construction commenced.
Yeah, construction commenced. Doesn't look like you're going to have any issues with that.
No.
Okay.
And we know that, and so that's why that's been a high priority for us.
Sorry.
Lobuk sales. We weren't somewhere in the back of my mind. Maybe Commissioner Call can refresh my memory, but
I asked Mike this earlier. I think where you're going is Lobuk sales will not count.
That's what I was remembering. That Lobuk sales
they're
would
not getting
count.
you have to have a building permit, and because theirs is a lot expansion, it's not a building permit, so we are not counting that in our 25%.
Well, I think it is helpful for the people here to know that it's not, the commercial is not pie in the sky. That it has to be under construction, it has to have permits, and it has to be approved and everything before the residential can even break ground. Is that a fair statement? Okay, good. So I did remember correctly.
And we are the only thing that's holding us up for putting our money into the plans and everything else is just as soon as we know, okay, we have the rezone, then we know, okay, we're moving forward with the commercial in the front, and we're putting our, architects and everything else for building plans and everything else.
Thank you, Mike.
Did you want to discuss any of your other slides, or?
No, I think everybody else has kind of seen that. We've tried to really, we went more, I know Randy and Carolyn kind of said, originally we came to you with a much more modern design. We came a little bit more farmhouse design, traditional design there. We obviously were upheld and are meeting all of the guidelines that you guys put in your PRD overlay, so we're not asking for any kind of variances there.
Yes, in the staff report, it talks about that units 29 through 40 won't meet the 30 feet setback.
Are you talking about the commercial part?
No, in the residential,
the units
sorry.
in the central area.
Okay. Well, the only reason why is because we added the extra sidewalks. And the road.
Well, not necessarily. There's, I think, like units 37 and 38, they're like 26, 27 feet.
We're talking like 2
But then they
feet.
have the smaller fenced rear yards.
Yeah.
So they don't have quite as a big of rear yards. So what the ordinance says is, if they're providing a common open space, you can reduce that. The planning commission could reduce it at site plan approval if you approve the zone change.
This says it occurs for units 29 through 40. Is that accurate? Which I think in my paper here's a little small for my eyes. But
I may have messed that up, and it may be left over from planning commission meeting, but I know for sure it's units 37, 38, maybe 39. I'd have to run back. I'd have to check that.
If we're making if we're doing that they all have their own private backyard too. And then in addition, it just goes to the road as far as that backyard. And we're not talking like it's 10 feet. We're, like he mentioned, I think we're at 28 feet. And it's mostly because of the sidewalk.
okay, yeah, just kind of as a general note. So when we look at density, which you meet, we look at open space and we look at setbacks. For me, I think they're all important before you start crimping down on some of them, so just...
Right, and we have, we didn't bring the other site plan. We had one other site plan that we had presented to the planning commission that had 570 closed and a different route, and that kept everything. We matched everything, but the planning commission wanted 570 open. And so because of that, we wanted to evenly, and they suggested that we we took their recommendations and came back with this, and that's, and that's why they approved this.
So commissioners, or council members and mayor, so just kind of procedural, say this ultimately gets approved, in whatever fashion. So the planning commission would give site plan approval and preliminary subdivision approval. Then the council, it'll come back to city council for final subdivision approval. So.
But really nothing can happen or will happen until the zone change
That is correct.
is incorporated.
Yeah, so for example, if you said, okay, we like that, but we won't accommodate you to go 2 feet less on those 2 units, that would be something you could still say that to us and we could still fix that. It wouldn't have to stop your vote on saying we allow the PRD overlay of the zone change.
So then you'll be able to tell us who your national tenants are.
I'm not trying to take Mike's job. I'm just explaining that there could still be some adjustments if needed. We're just going for the zone change, where a lot of other cities in development, we don't go near this extensive of a design as far as engineering and everything else. So we're only requesting the zone change. It doesn't mean that we have to be set in stone as far as the other parts. Although we would love to have a good envision so that we don't spend thousands of dollars on our engineering and then ask us to change it again.
Okay, Randy, do you have any questions online?
Yes, make sure I'm not muted. Thank you. I have just a couple questions for clarifications, and I'm not quite sure if it even means anything. Is Rhino Real Estate purchasing this land that we're being asked to change? I'm sorry.
That is correct.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And Mike, Florence, could you just verify that that would make no difference into what the qualifications that the applicant wants here for their commercial, the ratio for the commercial and the residential? That doesn't play anything into that, does it?
No.
Okay. And as to, I think Councilmember Broderick was talking about the units are, 29 through 40 approximately. Those are fenced yards for sure on those particular units. Those backyards on those ones on the south side of Elwood Place. Is that correct, Amy?
Correct. They all have, those ones in that middle island all have an individually fenced backyard.
Okay. And let's see. What else was my questions? Sorry about that. I think that'll do for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Carolyn, any more questions, or we'll open it up?
Hearing.
Yeah.
We've got here.
Mike, Dan?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Well, let's, now it's a public hearing, so we can open it up to the public, and you need to state your name and address, and please come up to the mic and speak into it so it can be heard. Okay. Yeah, just come to this one if you would, and state your name and address. And
my name is Carly Clement, and my address is 517 North Locust Avenue. The question I have with the 20%, if we opened up 570, how would that equate if we took that 20% and closed 570? How much would that put onto the other outlets?
that sounds like a traffic engineer. You still with us?
I don't know.
Would it reduce anything?
How
on
much
Locust?
would it take? Like that 20%, would it add
Would it
10%
increase?
to
Yeah.
500 and 10% to State Street?
Yeah. How would that be dispersed? Is our traffic engineer still there? There he is.
Sorry, I can certainly address that if you'd like. Again, those 20% numbers are over estimations to the east. I mean, if we think about this holistically, we're saying that 40% of the site traffic is going to head into residential neighborhoods. I think that's unrealistic. It's still my position that the majority of traffic is going to be oriented to State Street. I don't think a lot of traffic is going to be oriented towards Locust. So as the original traffic study showed, most of the traffic would still be oriented to Highway 89. We could say some more percentage would head to 500 to try to get to the east, but I just don't see what the draws are besides for the elementary school. It's a very short period of time. I'm trying to look at the site holistically.
So I guess more specifically, her question is, going back to the first scenario of 570, we're no longer an egress, an outlet, inlet. Would that, what would be the effect potentially in your opinion?
How much would that put on 500? I live on Locust, so I'm like, if they're coming from the thing and they're coming up 500, that's going to be a problem for when I'm trying to leave the house for elementary school or when I'm leaving for work. So
the eastbound percentages that are represented here are
like
different?
If some of those people, like he was saying, are the high traffic times are going to be when kids are going to elementary school. If these people, that I need to take my kids to elementary school, and if there's 20% more coming onto 500 North because 570 is closed off, that's going to add, that's 40% of the traffic coming up my street. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult and a lot of traffic that I'm not really all that happy with. I've got little ones too. So if there's more traffic, then, you know, what, I know we're supposed to keep track of our kids and stuff, but, you know, kids are running in the roads and stuff and traveling, and if there's that many people coming up and down the street, you know, how much more likely is an accident going to happen?
So if I'm reading between the lines, are you asking the question, the increased traffic if 570 is not opened up, are you wanting to say it should be opened up so the traffic's more dispersed? I mean, ultimately, I think that's the point you're trying to make.
Yes, I feel like 570 should be opened up. I think it would be a better way to distribute the traffic.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Christy Dagley. I live on 500 North, 268 West, 500 North. And I brought my kids with me.
Yeah, you said that in your email you'd bring them, so glad you did.
My name is Rosie Dagley.
Hi, Rosie.
I have to go to school and I like to ride my bike. And if there's going to be like a bunch of cars coming through, I might not be able to ride my bike anymore. No.
Yeah, my kids like to ride their bikes. They like to play outside with their friends. They like to run across the street to visit with their friends. And when I told my nanny that we were heading here to this meeting today and that we were concerned about more traffic heading on our street, she said, "Your street's already really busy." And it's true. There's already cars that go by so fast, and we put our slow down turtle out. And even more is going to make it so we hardly dare to let our kids outside, you know?
I'm sorry, I missed. What's your address again?
268 West, 500 North.
Okay, all right.
And also, I know it's been brought up before about speed bumps, and somebody said that, maybe my husband can grab my baby, do you mind? And it's been said that that would bother the snowplows. And I just want to say that, you know, snowplows are needed. I don't know, seems like you can count it on one hand the way it snows here lately. But the other 362 or 360 days a year, it could really help our kids be a lot safer and discourage people from using our street as a shortcut when they're running late. But that's about what I wanted to say.
All right, thank you. Next. And thank you for addressing the issue directly. I appreciate that. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to weigh in. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kurt, 284 West, 500 North. I'm just curious if we can continue that big 7-foot wall across my backyard in the corner. Because our backyard butts up against the south end right there.
Is that this home?
Yep, right there. Also, my second grader is really wondering when he's going to get a trampoline replaced because their tree fell in our yard. So, that's all. I just want a wall and someone to fix my trampoline. That's all.
What's your last name, Kurt?
Packer, Poecker.
Thank you. Next.
Well, the wall is, to answer his question, our planning commissioner, it's required anywhere that they touch residential. So that will be in the site plan down the road if it progresses, yeah.
My name is Mark Wright. I live at 266 West, 570 North. We are fairly new. We purchased our home the last part of February. One of the attractive parts of that home was to be on a cul-de-sac. We did learn that it's in the master plan that it go through, but we have neighbors who've lived there for 40 years with it being a dead-end street. If we were to look back at the model that was up for the longest time with the red line around it, I'm not a traffic scientist, but if I was heading east out of that development, what street would I choose? It's clear to me. I mean, I wouldn't dogleg around and hit 500. I would go straight up 570. And in all due respect to our fellow citizen from Locust, 570 empties onto Locust just like 500 does, so I don't see how bringing it that way would cut down on traffic unless they live closer to 500. Anyway, my point would be, with that high a density, why couldn't it serve the community best by being a continuous loop that would enter and exit back to State Street and not affect the long-standing residential area that's in place? And the security of our properties, the lifestyle of living in a quieter, much more sedate arrangement is going to be disturbed. And once that opens up to the same concerns that the folks on 500 and 600 already face, and that is they don't live on a cul-de-sac and they continue to see more and more traffic come their way. And I empathize with them on that. But as far as a resident of 570, it changes ours from no traffic to it becoming the most popular traffic pattern in that arrangement. And that's I would just ask that the 570 be left alone and that we be granted cul-de-sac status as it's been for many, many decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to be next? Please.
Steve Pelton, 780 North, 400 West. I'm just to the north of Low Book Sales. And I'd like to make one statement. Low Book has been a great neighbor. That we haven't had any problems with it. Initially, we did. Their management changed their traffic patterns, and it's been great. Now, I don't think anybody I've spoken to objects to the commercial development up here. That's needed, anticipated, and it's going to be good for the city. I think the biggest objection is going to be the 72 units on that small property. That's way too much. When I moved to Lindon, the city motto was a little bit of country. That's why I chose Lindon, is because of the large lots, and it was a quieter town because of that. And I love that, and I'd like to see it there. I don't even think most people would object to 4 units per acre, but almost 10 units per acre is ridiculously large. The traffic is way too much already. I don't know if any of you have ever tried driving down Geneva Road at 400 South Orem, where all the condos are, at 5 o'clock at night. It sometimes takes over half an hour to get through that intersection. And I can foresee that happening on State Street and these other side streets in there because of the increased traffic. I know the traffic engineer says it'll handle it. I don't think it will. It's the other day when it rained and everybody's car got dirty, there was a lineup clear to 400 North on State Street trying to get into the car wash. It was a traffic nightmare to try to get into my neighborhood. And so I just can't express how strongly, I object to the high density, 72 units on that small of a property, no matter where the egress and ingresses are on that. It's going to increase the traffic to a point where it's going to take away everything that Lindon stands for. And I can see, you know, the bigger it gets, the more people are going to object to the fact that I have horses, which was part of my property when I brought it, and I want to keep it that way, that little bit of country. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next. So you speaking as a resident or as a planning commissioner?
I'll speak as a commissioner. So Commissioner Johnson, I live at 581 North Locust Avenue, Stephen Johnson, I should probably say. Just one thing that hit me, and unfortunately, I think because of the timing of some of our meetings, the council sometimes pops in and they weren't able to. But just in your staff report, as I thought, and for the record, I was the dissenting vote, if you want. But you're the elected officials, and as it says here, the goals are land use considerations and goals, and we've elected you to weigh these, and I'm glad it's your job, and we've done ours on the commission. But it says the goal of housing and residential areas in Lindon City is to provide a housing and living environment that supports and complements the unique rural quality and character of Lindon City. In my opinion, and this didn't meet that. Or, number two, maintain and enhance the pleasing appearance and environmental quality of existing residential neighborhoods by avoiding encroachment of land uses which would adversely impact residential areas, i.e. increased traffic, noise, visual harmony, etc., and by providing adequate screening and buffering of any adjacent commercial or industrial development, including parking and service areas. I won't read all of them, but the other one that was important to me was the second from the bottom on that says transitions between different land uses and intensities should be made gradually with compatible uses, particularly where natural man-made buffers are not available. As a commission, we struggled with this on the parking, on the traffic, and on buffers. And we even put that in our motion, right? That there should be a good buffer. My biggest problem with the current plan is that buffer got smaller. Those lots got reduced next to 570. And as a commissioner, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you had about our hours and hours long process. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Next.
Hi, Kathy Rockhill, 380 West, 600 North. And first of all, I just want to thank the Planning Commission because they were so kind and respectful to all of us as citizens. And we went through many meetings. It's been over a year. So they have been so good. And I also want to thank the developers because they have been so patient, doing so many site plans and site plans and site plans, trying to make everyone happy. But I also want to thank you also for being here and making this hard decision for our city. I understand that this lot became commercial a long time ago when I've been in Lindon for almost 30 years. So when they decided to make Total Health Institute and Lowbook sells, that whole property increased in value. And so I understand that when they sell it, they wanted to try and make money. So and then when they passed the ordinance of 10-1, that kind of changed a little bit of country. So I understand that. And this developer is doing everything they can to work within the ordinance that we already passed. And so that's why this is a difficult decision, I know, for you guys. And I appreciate your service for this because this is really hard and it's been hard for our neighborhood to deal with. But the bottom line is they can build 10 units per acre, and we will have more traffic. And I really feel bad for 570. I do. And I was the one that was on the very dead-end street before Ivory Homes. And and we loved our farm across the street that we used to see. And I feel bad for these new neighbors, but we all have to bear this traffic. It's never going to be a little bit of country now because it's 10 units per acre that has already passed. And so I just feel like we should all bear the traffic, and it is a hard change. I do understand that this is a really hard change for everyone. But if you were to take all three of the streets, 600 North right now is really the busiest, and it wasn't supposed to have Walmart traffic, and it was just only supposed to be residential. And there is supposed to be a blue rapid transit in the middle of our state street, which means it's going to be very difficult to turn left. So they're going to probably go around if they are going to go east to the schools. And so I just think that we all should share the burden. And I think that this is the best site plan they've had so far, where I think that it's divided into thirds so that we all, and I would just make maybe one more recommendation, is if they had a roundabout on 570, I think that might discourage people going up that street, where most of them would want to do the straight shot to State Street and maybe over to 500 and then out to State Street instead of up through 500. I also do think that this traffic study didn't really keep the Sunday church traffic into consideration, because 500 is actually pretty busy on a typical Sunday day when there is a lot of traffic there. So thanks so much for listening.
All right, thank you.
Good comments.
Next. Thank you for being thoughtful in your comments. We appreciate that.
So my name is Justin Stewart. You can actually see my name on there. I live at 288 West 570 North, so I will be directly adjacent to this development. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of things. If I get lost, it's because this is like 6 months of thought, all compressed into, I'm going to try and do it real quick for you guys. So, real quick, as far as the vote, so I just wanted to point out that the vote as far as making 570 a cul-de-sac was a 4-2 vote. And so unfortunately, we were one vote away from almost keeping, or at least tying a 3-3 vote as keeping our cul-de-sac. Looking at the transition, so they actually shrunk the 2 single-family homes, and I believe I went and looked on there, and Mike can correct me if I'm incorrect, but it said that the lots are 5,000 square feet. So that is 0.11 acres, or around 9 units per acre still. So it doesn't feel like much of a transition when it's still at 9 units per acre, and that single-family home is basically high density by a different name. It's just a really small unit. And so we will be, I think we will actually be, us and the Alvards may be the only people in Lindon that when you stand in front of our house, you will actually be 100, 130 feet away from a sixplex, as far as people that lived in an original neighborhood and then a new development came in. And so that's one of our concerns, at least my concern living on 570. And obviously, I think nobody's going to be surprised that everybody that lives on 570 wants it to stay a cul-de-sac. Everybody on 500 doesn't, and everybody on 600 probably doesn't. And you know, I can't fault anybody for any of those places. I think if I lived different places, I'd think differently as well. But as far as 570, like I said, we're going to be the closest to the sixplexes. We will be directly associated with high density. When I moved to Lindon, I moved from Orem, kind of a more dense area. I was looking for a larger lot, a larger home for my kids. We wanted a little bit more space. And the little bit of country that everybody talks about, at least to me, what it meant was having a nice yard that my kids can run and play with. We could have animal rights. And that's going to fundamentally change for us. We're going to lose a cul-de-sac, which my kids go out and bike on every day, and people on 500 have their kids play, and I'm sure on 600 too. But we have kids, we're going to be losing a cul-de-sac. I think a cul-de-sac, ironically, one of the things that I wanted to come to Lindon because of the larger lots. I picked this house specifically because of the cul-de-sac, ironically. And we paid a little bit extra because of the cul-de-sac. But unfortunately, I did not look at the general plan and see that it was a through street. I think majority of people don't necessarily look at the general plan when they're making a decision, right? They look at the house. But that being said, that has changed and the zoning has changed. At least this would be now a second change for it. So although everybody says that a through street, it isn't necessarily uncommon for general plans to change and streets to change as zoning changes. Just like zoning changes, I think a general plan and the street could change as well. And so we would ask that it obviously be a cul-de-sac for those reasons. Like I said, we're losing a cul-de-sac. We're going to be directly associated with the development, whereas people on 600 and 500, they have a buffer between them and the actual development, the residential portion of the development. And so I don't think they will be as associated as we will. And so when somebody comes like me, I stood in front of my house, I was excited. There was a horse pasture, that's not going to be there anymore, I understand that. But now somebody that wants a little bit of country and wants a larger property is going to stand in front of my house and look at a sixplex next door or 100 feet away. And so I think that is going to drop my property values, losing the cul-de-sac and then also being associated with that. And then I want to talk a little bit, so the traffic has been, I've spent 6 months thinking about if I lived in this development, where would I go, right? What traffic pattern would I use? And ironically, I'm a super analytical person. If I can shave like 8 seconds off of my drive to work or wherever else, then I take that route. So as I look at this and trying to put it in context as well with the streets that surround us, if you are headed east and north, almost every single person, if not every single person in that development will just go up 570. They're not going to go up 500 because it doesn't make any sense to head south and then east and then north and then east and then take another left to get onto Locust. It's kind of a roundabout way. So at least I think we will have a very high percentage of, again, the east and northbound traffic, and that would be your high school, Pleasant Grove, rec center. My daughter plays volleyball, so, and this is me trying to think of the different trips that I take. Now, if you're looking at this specifically, this design, and you are headed now east and south, and that would be the grade school, which we have grade schoolers as well. If you are on the north side of that development, you're going to go up 570. You're not going to go around over to 500 and again make all these weird turns, which is a benefit that 500 has is it isn't a straight shot. It has multiple turns in it. If you're in the middle, you're also going to go straight up 570. And I believe if you're on the south side, you're also going to go up 570. So 70+%. Now the people that would be, in my opinion, as I look at this, up for debate would be those that are on the west side. Some of those people for sure will go down and over onto 500 if they're going to the elementary school. So in my opinion, as you talk about eastbound traffic, we will get close to 100% of the east-north and more than 50% of the east and south traffic, which would give us 75 to 85% of the traffic coming from residential, which I think most people believe the majority of the traffic that is going to go eastbound will be the residential traffic. There's not going to be a ton of commercial. Ironically, though, one of the things that was brought up in the original traffic study was that 570 was not needed because of the grid pattern that currently existed. You did not need another through street on 570. And that by closing 570, you actually maintained that commercial was more oriented towards State Street. So one of the things that will happen, or one of the things that was pointed out in the traffic study, not my study, is that by opening up 570, you'll actually have some people that will go down 570 that normally wouldn't to get to the backside of the commercial. And part of the reason of that is as you pop off on the connection at 500, that's so close to State Street that not a lot of people are trying to get to that entrance necessarily to get to the backside of the commercial. Also, ironically, if you look, we are next door, like directly adjacent. If you're going on to 600, or sorry, to get to 600, you have a bunch of commercial. If you pop out right there where 500 is at, and if I'm driving on that street, I have the church on one side of me, I have a commercial on the right. Straight ahead of me, I have a parking area and the Alpine School District. Like I said, that's completely different from the entrance on my side, which is directly next to my house. And then, so, trying to do this quick, sorry. But if you do close 570, I try to think through that as well. I think that 500 does get most of the east and south traffic as people are going to grade schools. Some people would be like me, not a lot, but some people would be like me. I actually prefer when I go out on the State Street, I don't go to the lights. I try to turn left on the State because it's quicker. I know there's a BRT that's in discussion as well. But some people, when you're that close to State and you're going to the elementary school, which is close to State, they will take State Street up. But you have to take a left on State Street, which not a lot of people do. For the east and north traffic, this is hopefully not I'm saying a lot of stuff, like I said, 6 months. If our road was closed and you were headed east and north, you will go out onto State Street. Once you go to State Street, do you have a question? Or I guess
No, I'm just visualizing it.
Yeah, most people I don't think would go out on a Fifth. So I'm assuming most people go out on the State if they're trying to head again, kind of northeast, high school PG. And if you're doing that, you're probably not going to go on 600. They would get a couple maybe, but 600 again has a benefit of, if you were to come off of State Street, you would then head east, and then you would jog the opposite direction of where you would like to go. You'd head south, and then you head further east, and then you get on Locust. So I think most people will actually go up to 8th. I generally take 8th because it doesn't have a big dog leg in it. Or else they'll go even further if they're going to the high school. And I did this on Google Maps because I wanted to see, you know, where would Google say that I'm actually going to go if I get onto State Street. It says that you would go up to, like, into PG. There's a road that cuts across, and then you also have the Purple Turtle, which cuts across. So a lot of once you get onto State Street, unless you're very close or trying to go somewhere that is very close, possibly the church would be a location that people would go up 6th, assuming they don't go to this church that's almost in the development. But if you're going to the high school, that is far enough away that you're going to spend most of your time on major streets, which would be State Street and then probably the Purple Turtle Road. So that is basically all of my discussion points, trying to think through the traffic. The reason that I think 570 should be closed is not only will we get the majority of the traffic if we're open, we would be the only ones that are close enough that people will park in front of our houses. I think that taking away cul-de-sac drops our property values. It would also drop our property values to be directly associated with high-density units. For people that are traveling to Lindon or moving to Lindon like me, I think most people want a little bit of country, want a larger space, and don't want to necessarily live right next to high density. And so this is just out of the box thinking as well. I know 500 has concerns. I looked at Google Maps, and at some point, it sounds like Lindon actually bought that little portion of 500 there from the Alpine School District, and possibly somebody here has more history on it than me. That street is almost wide enough if you wanted to, and if anybody could look into it and see any benefit to Alpine School District, to go ahead and take that road all the way through the Alpine School District's current property, and that would actually take traffic off of the residents on 500. I don't know that that is plausible, but again, trying to think of something that could solve a problem here that we all have. Not only would it not put traffic onto their street at that point, but it would actually probably pull traffic off of their street. I would assume that some people that actually go down their street are going because of the Alpine School District that exists right there. So that's just a thought that I had that could solve a lot of these problems. And I think that is probably all that I have. So thank you very much again. Like, this is very difficult. I appreciate you guys' time spending, looking at all this stuff. I spent a lot of time thinking through the traffic, thinking through the parking and how the parking could impact us. We have quite a few apartments on our street already. This would just exacerbate a problem that we already have I think everybody's been to high density units and seen the traffic as it spills out onto all the streets. Like I said, nobody's gonna park in front of residential in 500 or 600, but that is a legitimate concern that we have. And so just wanted to bring up all of those points, and please ask you that if you are going to, it is high density. That's not really Lindon in my perspective, or not the Lindon that I bought into or was trying to buy into. But if you are going to pass this overlay, we would ask that you close 570 for the reasons that I brought up. The majority of the traffic that would go up our street, the parking, and the decreased value. And then last thought, they went from having 10% of the traffic going east, which would be 95 trips of the 951 trips, to 45%. I think the traffic engineer said that that's too high. But if you sent 400 trips up our street, going from 0, that is a significant burden to be borne by those that are on 570, in addition to all the other things that we will have to take into account as well. So thank you for your careful consideration, and thanks for your time.
Justin, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
So knowing that, like you, I'm sad to see the property have to be developed. It's sort of inevitable, growth is inevitable, and how we manage it is always what we're trying to do, right? And knowing some of the iterations that came of other commercial potentialities here, how does your neighbors on your street feel about, well, if this was what are the pros and cons versus some high-end townhomes versus it could have been all commercial with a straight shot all the way to State Street versus all the scenarios. You sounds like you've thought through all the scenarios. So is this better than just all commercial straight shot to State Street?
So that's a good question. I asked that exact same question to my wife, right? So the scenarios are we have commercial, that's what it's currently zoned as.
Right.
And in the general plan, it's a through street. I would guess because of the nature of this property, it's kind of long and narrow. I wouldn't be surprised if they did do commercial, that we would be the backside of a commercial and it would be a cul-de-sac. That being said, if it wasn't that and they did commercial, it would probably depend on what type of commercial. Is it a commercial that is going to draw a lot of people from those that live east of us? Because if that's the case, then people would be driving down our street. If it is a different type, and that would be like a restaurant or like a swig would bring a lot of people probably. If it's a medical center or an orthodontist, you're not pulling that many people from close by, so those people will be coming from State Street, generally speaking. So, short answer though to your question, my wife said she would rather have commercial and a through street than this high density and a through street. And they have the Waits that live next to us. Me personally, it would depend. I think the majority of commercial, I would prefer to have commercial, but there are some commercial aspects that if they put just the wrong commercial right next to me, then yeah, it's going to create a lot of traffic, and that would be worse than the high density. So, does that answer the question?
Yes.
That was a very long answer actually to it, because I have thought that exact same question and a lot of others. So, any other questions for me, or is that it?
Just by the show of hands, how many more would like to make a comment? Go ahead, come on up.
I guess it's appropriate I go next. I'm Amy Alvord, and I live at the bottom of 570 North, across the street from Justin. I thought he did a very good job touching on all of the same issues, since we're neighbors and we both are adjacent to this project. Some of the concerns that we both have. I just wanted to mention just a couple of things. I have a whole list of notes, and he really touched on all of them very well. The biggest one was parking is a huge concern of having people park in front of our homes. I was talking with Mike Florence earlier today, and we were kind of doing some measurements of our property. The homes on 570 have narrower frontages. They're kind of shorter on the front, and our half acres are more behind us, so they're deep. But the houses on 600 and on 500, they're a wider frontage with a shorter depth, and so their half acres are more spread out sidewards rather than the deep part. The point that makes is that there's not a lot of parking in front of our homes on 570 because the houses are closer. We have a lot of accessory apartments that already park on that street, and with additional traffic in such more of a condensed neighborhood, we're just worried about that issue. I think we also did some street measurements that showed that our street is actually a little bit smaller in width than the other two streets. With compounding the fact that our homes are closer together and less parking on our streets is also an issue. I also agree that with the idea of opening up 570, we are the straight shot up to Locust Avenue. The turns on 570, there's 3 right-hand angles, that 90-degree angles. 500. Yeah, 500 that you would have to take. The traffic is a burden for anyone who lives on any of these neighborhoods, and it's heartbreaking because the solution that protects us burdens somebody else. And these people in this room, sorry, I wrote notes so I wouldn't get emotional. They are our neighbors, they are our friends, they are our ward members. We love each other, we serve together. We're kind of in a battle for protecting our homes and protecting, our values, our children. And so it is a very sensitive, hard situation that we've been going through for well over a year now. And so it's just been really difficult. I'm just so grateful that we have this opportunity to speak and for you to hear our concerns. I did want to mention that Amy Johnson, the developer, had mentioned that there was another plan. I know it is actually on page 58 of 57 or 58 of the supportive documents that Mike Florence has put together. I think there's like 198 pages. I don't know if you guys went through and read them all. That is a massive amount of documentation that has been following this decision that you're making tonight. But there is this is the, I think he's finding it.
Is that this one?
Did you find it? No, it's the one with the cul-de-sac ending with four homes on the end. It was on it actually just said page 58. I know Amy Johnson had just mentioned that there was this option of a plan that they had presented. I think it was a plan, this is it right here. This is one of the plans that was presented when they applied for this zoning change in the first week of March. That does show the cul-de-sac ending with some larger homes. Justin also mentioned, that would be a great appropriate buffer. I think the biggest worry that we have living right next, the two homes that live right next to this subdivision are, if 570 is open, will there be an appropriate transition that will protect our property value? By reducing the density of this and having some kind of a buffer, I think we will... I just feel like the size of this development, surrounded by these longstanding neighbors, in these existing neighbors, it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. I think the negative impact is just too much on all of us to bear. And I think there's so many different solutions that you could come up with for this project. We would just hope that you would definitely consider us as existing neighbors and residents of Lindon City.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
My desire is not to debate.
Okay.
I'm interested in knowing what, particularly where we've been very, very careful to make certain that the number of parking spaces available in development are, again, we could debate whether they're adequate or inadequate, but by code, by common practice, those appear to be more than adequate, as well as the 19 visitor parking. What leads you to believe that they would park on 570 when they have the opportunity to pull, if I understood it correctly, there's 2-car garages and 2 spots in the driveway? Again, I'm asking sincerely, what would make you think or believe that they would be parking in front of your homes?
Well, so a lot of people can't park on the driveways if a permanent parking on the driveway. If you have people that have parked inside the driveway, we have this issue at our house. Our kids don't park on the driveway because we go in and out of our driveway all the time. So our children have to park on the street. I also think it's a matter of the homes that are closest to us. Which
Homes
is why
or the new units?
The new units
New
closest
units, okay.
to us. If there was a larger buffer, and there, instead of these smaller, then they would be further away from us. It also depends on where the extra parking is. Is there extra parking closer to us? Or because people will park the closest that they can, that's most convenient for them to visit that townhome that they're visiting. And if that's up on our street because they want to visit one that's the closest to us, then that's what will happen. I know the streets are really wide, which we really, really appreciate with sidewalks. I think that's fantastic. We really appreciate that. But on some of the plans and some of the locations, it's solid driveways. And so there's on those parts of the plan, there is no availability of parking on the street because you would park in front of someone's driveway, And I know that they've tried to spread out that parking lots, designated parking spaces throughout the development.
Yep.
But just us having direct access and living right next to the entrance, if it is open, it's a fact that, you think about 72 homes, if somebody has Thanksgiving and you have, 10, 15 cars, that are going to visit certain homes on that holiday, there is going to be parking that overflows.
Okay, well, I appreciate that
Yeah,
perspective.
so I hope that makes
No, that was a great
that makes
explanation.
sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are 19 visitor stalls in this current iteration, is that correct?
There should be, yes.
Okay.
Other comments, or you good?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. I believe there was one more over here, and then we can go back. Oh, more arms. Oh, that's good, that's good. Come on up. I think you wanted to come up next.
My name is Cole Hooley, and I live on 700 North. And want to thank the City Council and Mayor for your service. Really appreciate it. I don't envy your seat at all, actually. And I know these are tricky things to think about. I'm a late comer to this conversation. We moved into this specific neighborhood about a year and a half ago and only became aware of this development a few months ago. So I know I'm playing a lot of catch up, and I appreciate Kathy kind of speaking to some of the things that have already been done, because it's unclear to me what parameters you all have to work with, what flexibility. I keep hearing different things about. Then we come back with a site plan, then we come back with it, and you can ask us to change. So I'm offering that to say I'm not sure if what I'm about to say is within the parameters that you've given. My ask is this, that as the city council, I see you as an arbiter between two bodies right now. The developers have shared that what they've offered is as close as it gets. And the community, when I came here, I heard anecdotally from a lot of the neighbors that they were having a difficult time with the residential component of the development. And so I'm an analytic sort of person, so that, and I sent you all the report, but I know you get a lot of emails, so you probably haven't had a chance to review it. So I surveyed all of the homeowners from 500 North to 800 North in that area to go beyond anecdote to see exactly what people were saying and thinking. And there was obviously the two issues of whether or not 570 should go through, and that is hotly contested depending on where you live. As the analysis would show. But one thing that was across the board, actually 98% of the respondents, and it's getting to your question, Councilwoman Lundberg, when you asked about sort of the commercial, I just hurried and pulled up those data, and looking at the three most impacted streets, 500, 570, 600, the high density component wasn't even, of course, low density was the first priority, but then commercial on all of those roads would prefer, based on these data, and on those streets at least, it represents almost 100% of the homes would prefer a commercial only, as opposed to the current configuration. And so my ask is that the city council, you've got 98% of the community saying that they're not for the development, not specific to the 570 issue, that's a different issue, but just the residential component of the development. You have 98% saying they're not for it. And you have developers who've done great work to get where they're at. And so whatever parameters and flexibility you have to close that gap is my ask. I don't know what flexibility you have, and that's where my limitation is. But from just the data from the local neighborhood, it seems like that chasm is still probably too wide to be comfortable with from a constituent perspective, but that's just what I wanted to share.
Yeah. May I just make one comment?
Yes.
Again, I'm sincere when I ask this. One thing we have to take into consideration too is, and certainly we appreciate all the comments, but we have to take into consideration the property rights owner too.
Yeah.
To be able to develop it in a way that's not only legal but financially feasible. And I've heard many times it's not our responsibility to make sure a developer makes money or doesn't make money.
Correct.
But I think the reality of the situation is developers are probably one of the best examples in my mind of understanding the markets and understanding what is and isn't viable or so forth. And my thought is that, and I could be wrong, is if it was feasible for the entire property to go commercial, and that was their end result of their market research and so forth, that's probably what we would be seeing here. So again, certainly understand where you're coming from. If it were me, I would probably feel the same way, just like this gentleman said, Justin, depending on where you stand, depends on where
Of course,
you sit.
of course.
But, you know, just a thought that, you know, we also are weighing a lot of different sides of the issue, not the least of which is the property rights owner to be able to, within the confines of the guidelines and so forth, to be able to develop that in a manner that, yeah, so, yeah,
Sure.
I'm sure that, yeah, I'm sure you've considered that, but that's
Of
just
course,
a thought.
of course.
Just a thought on my part.
Yeah, no, that makes great sense. I'll respond. I don't know if you had a specific question you wanted me to, but my response, I feel like public policy, I understand last year there was a shift in zoning. So we're talking about public policy and private ownership. And I feel like there's a little bit of a clash on who is considered public. Who's the public in this case? And so when you have competing publics, that's where I feel like the issue becomes a little stickier. You're like individual property right owners to develop based off of a public policy shift. And so if the issue wouldn't have been, the zoning wouldn't have changed, they would have had to have sold it as commercial. But because public policy shifted, perhaps, or maybe not in their favor.
I think market conditions shifted. Again, that's my opinion. And also
The market conditions shifted the city council's vote on the zoning?
No, not at all. Again, the developer came, and not only this developer, but any developer comes with a plan or an idea that they've carefully researched.
Mhm.
They've carefully done the market analysis on it and what they present. And we all know, you know, Amy, forgive me, but I've worked in development for years. We all know that the first ask is always going to be, thanks for asking, but no thanks for thinking you're going to get it.
Sure,
if you know what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, and I'm not suggesting how I'm going to vote. When you talk about the public, there's another side of the public too. There's the elderly people in Lindon that don't want a 4,000 square foot house and a quarter acre or a half acre lot. This is ideal. We've talked about this, especially in the Planning Commission. This is ideal for those people.
Mhm.
You've got first time home buyers, or I mean the price points on these things. You're not going to get first time home buyers, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah, it totally makes a lot of sense.
And again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to debate you.
Oh, no, I don't feel like it's a debate.
When you talk about the public, I have to think in my mind there's another element of the public.
Yeah, I agree.
That we're not, you know, that we have to consider.
Totally, I totally agree. And I unfortunately have no data to support if I could, to do that sort of data analysis to see what the perspective, I'd be happy to empirically talk about it. I do appreciate something that came up in the commission planning meeting 2 times ago, where talking about the public in tiers was interesting. Talking about current residents, future residents, current businesses, and then finally developers who come in and help develop our land. So I would also say in that place, you're right, there are so many different audiences.
Yeah.
And then it's a question of whose pinch point is elevated in the priority list.
Yeah.
So you now, I mean, you've known, but just to reiterate the pinch point for the local residents.
Sure, and thank you. Your comments were helpful.
You betcha. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So, to your point, aren't there current property rights to do commercial, and they're coming to you to change their property rights, right? Would that be, because they haven't gotten their zoning changed yet, this is what they're coming for?
Repeat the question for those on the tag.
He's asking the current property rights versus changing the zoning to, I guess, grant some other type of use of the property. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you can certainly appreciate that this is not a unique situation. I mean, this is not a situation where, and I say the developer, I've got no dog in the fight. I really don't. But this is a natural evolution of the growth of a community. And granted, you can put the brakes on it if you want to, as a council or as a commission, or by voting someone in that accepts your point of view. But this is certainly not an unusual situation. This happens all the time. That's what we do.
Yeah, let's put it this way. It's not necessarily necessarily a natural evolution. It is a potential.
Yes, that's good. Good way to put it.
And you know, your legislative people can can set a certain standard, and that's what they're gonna live by, and that's what they're gonna die by. And
I was more asking a process question. I don't think they have a new property right yet, so their current property right is commercial. I'm just asking if that is
That's
right.
correct.
Right?
Right, but we do handle requests all of the time to change zoning.
For sure.
From one use to another. That in and of itself, this situation in and of itself is not unusual or dramatic, I suppose. Okay, thank you. I've said enough. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's ask, if we could, let's go ahead and go with those that have not made a comment yet, that would like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
I'll make it really quick. I'm Riley Brott. I live at 265 West, 500 North. I appreciate you guys' comments, and it's a hard job, the job that you guys have on this. There's a lot of neighbors that have a lot of
angst.
You know, we all have
And rightly so.
a lot of
Rightly so.
Yeah.
Of anxiety over this. Anxiety would be a good word, I think, for all of us. Today, there was 50 text messages back and forth with 500 North. Back and forth.
I think I only got a dozen of them, so you're not.
Yeah.
More, but yeah.
So, you know, I mean, we're all friends. We talked about that. I just want to, the only point that I want to make is if you're going to put something in this size, I'm a developer too. I build subdivisions. That's what I do for work. We're building one in Midvale right now. Same issues with the neighbors. They're saying, why are we doing this? Why are you allowing this to happen? So I get it. I understand. This is a great plan, in my opinion. In my opinion. The roads situation is perfect, in my opinion. I feel like the situation you have with 570 opened up is great. Everything in there is going to work. It's going to flow. It's got to go out several different directions. So I think this is a great plan, and that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Come on up, and then I think we've got a couple more over here. So, and then we can go to someone new.
Thanks for giving me a minute. I'm Austin Johnson. I live on 570, 263 West 570. And when we moved back to Lindon, I grew up on Locust Avenue between 570 and 500. And I got married, moved all the way to Orem for a few years, and then came back. I knew that the Norton property would be developed into something at some point, and I've been along for the whole ride on this one. Early on, there was a storage unit option that was presented that they thought they could make work, and it would probably be built by now had it went through. But we had a few neighbors that didn't like it, and they went back to the drawing board. And it's been proven on paper that 570 can be closed, and that's my feeling, that I would like to see that it stays closed. But they've had multiple options of a similar plan of this that did close 570, and that's what I wanted to jump up and say. I appreciate you guys. I wouldn't trade you jobs.
Thank you. Let's go here and then over there, and then I believe there was one more comment in the back. No? You're third in line, okay. Go ahead, state your name and address, please.
I'm Glenn Dagley. I live on 268 West, 500 North. I also own a home on 600 North. And kind of like Riley said, that I was at the last planning meeting where they advised the developer to lower the number of houses, and then they also approved the site plan to send to you guys for review also. And yeah, I think the street configuration is great. I'd like to see lower numbers. I feel like they didn't do that. They kind of just shrunk the other lot sizes down to make more open space, but they didn't actually drop the number of houses. So I still feel like they're doing the bare minimum, but as far as looking to the future, if the bus comes through or anything like that, I feel like 570 has to go through for the safety of the neighborhood to disperse traffic. So.
All right, thank you. Please.
Hello, Shawnee Keith, 355 West, 600 North. And I just don't want 600 North to be forgotten really quick. It was mentioned that a couple of houses are the only ones that are right up against. All of 600 North, my house will back up and look right. I'm very a part of this development where my house is. And commercial would be very sad for me to have to look out at commercial. And those are just a couple things. And parking is always a problem. I mean, our street, it's a nightmare with apartments that are supposed to be they're supposed to be provided in their driveways and they're not, so they're parked all over. I'm sure 570 sees that too. So I don't know how you handle that, but I feel like parking problems would be like Sundays and holidays maybe for that area. And it sounded like it would work out to me just fine. And the high density, my family's involved in development, and this to me is not, I would love it to be like 60. That would be great. But high density is a lot. If you say high density, to me that's like apartments. And I have a friend that lives around our neighborhood that would love to live here. I mean, it would be great for her to sell her home in the situation that she's with. Her husband has passed away. You know, it's not a bad thing for this, is our opinion. So that's it.
All right, thank
Thank
you. Please.
Hello, my name is Mary Lichty. I live on 275 West, 500 North. And I just wanted to say, in my opinion, also, I guess I don't understand why 10 lots per acre was even allowed. You know, if we're trying to work with it, I would think maybe 4 or 5. Anyway, that's just our opinion. I just think it's way too many. Also, when we moved here, ours was a dead-end street also too, and that's one reason we bought our house too, because of our dead-end street, and we loved it, and we didn't know it was going to go through, but it started going through, and when they built the church down there on Young Women's Night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we had teenagers driving up and down there crazy, and on Sunday in church. It hasn't been like that. It's actually been nicer this last year. It's like almost we got our dead-end street back. But if 570 is closed, and I feel for them because it was devastating to lose our cul-de-sac or our dead-end street. But if that's closed, it's going to all go up our street. And we know what it's like to have random people just drive down to take shortcuts through our neighborhood, especially when church was going. They're still not doing youth activities and stuff like that yet. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. I think we need to share the traffic, or I love the idea that Justin said over here, where if we could do a street through Alpine School District, that would be really great. But I don't know if that could ever happen. And
I don't want to speak for the school district, but that may not happen anytime soon. But anyway, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, but maybe I'm taking some of that off and doing, like they said, a better transition down 570 so it's not so devastating for them would be good. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional first-time comments?
That was directed at me.
I want to make sure everyone has a voice first. Now, if there are additional comments, I'll welcome those now. Are we good, or?
Can I make a clarification?
Please.
Please. I talked for so long, I felt it. The other thing I didn't clarify. I talked about, all the traffic's going to go this way. My point in saying all that is that, and this is going to be very controversial because everybody on 500 and 600 probably would disagree, and I don't, anyway. The irony is, if we are open, not all, but a vast majority of traffic goes up ours, and so we get a lot of it, and I don't know, nearly as much traffic actually goes up 600, 800, and beyond. If we're closed, I think you actually spread the traffic across more streets. 500 would get the vast majority. They probably get 50% just because of how they are situated. But as far as east and north, like I was trying to explain, that actually gets spread out across more streets as opposed to just going up ours. So I was just gonna make that clarification.
Okay.
That ironically, closing our street, in my opinion, spreads the traffic out across more streets than just us and 500. So that's all I want to say.
If we get 50% of the traffic though?
No, that stinks for you, but I'm getting to 80%, so.
Allegedly, we don't know that yet.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to clarify, so. Okay, is that all the public comment? We good? Okay. Council, are we ready to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike, a second by Carolyn. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's closed. So now, council, this is where the real work gets done. Anyone wanting to make a comment, to have more discussion as the council? Are we ready to make a decision on how we want to move forward? We want to move forward.
I have no comments.
Van, are you?
Yeah, I'll throw out some things.
Okay, good.
I usually do. And I certainly appreciate everybody's concerns and emails. As we all live in this city and we're neighbors and we're friends and sometimes we're closer to something, sometimes we're not. I want you to know that we listen to that. We understand and try to, I've been on those streets probably 10, 15 times specifically to deal with this. The impact that comes changes your lives from what it was. I've lived here for a long time and we've all seen the changes going on. So I feel that impact. I like the idea of how the developers try to respond to that as best that they can. And we have the responsibility now to make decisions that impact, that some of you won't love, some of you will be happy about, but we try to make sure that we've heard everybody, and then we make the decision that's the best for it. For me, I'm very comfortable with the commercial part of this, and like what's happening there. The density, I've always been uncomfortable there, and when I speak density, again, going back to my point earlier, I think the density, the open space requirements, and the setbacks, I think those all have to be met. The amount of density here does certainly make me uncomfortable, for sure.
Okay. Randy, Carolyn, anyone else want to kind of say how they
Oh, I
feel?
have a lot, but I don't know if Carolyn wants to go first.
I'll let the two of you decide who wants to go first.
I'll let Carolyn go first just because perhaps you're going to say something and then it's easier for it to be heard with you being present, so.
We can hear you great, Randy.
Hopefully you'll check some of my things off, Carolyn.
Well, I don't know what you're going to say, but all right. So I want to thank everyone for being here. And like I said, growth is inevitable and growth can be hard. And there's a lot of questions. I want to address one question that came up earlier is why is this even a consideration to change from commercial and let there be a housing component? And I think Mike touched on that a little bit. Market forces are such. When this was all zoned commercial to this extremely deep lot, a lot of folks said, why isn't this residential in the back? And those transitions from commercial to residential, people, who's going to want half acres, nice custom homes right up to a commercial user that could have lights and noise and maybe this through street coming through, there could be a lot of impact and intensity. So market forces are such, commercial has changed, retail has changed from where it was 10, 20 years ago. I think the initial vision when I've talked to the folks that served on the city originally was in the days when a big box user could be a potential development, and we know big box is very different now. It doesn't really happen anymore. And so as we looked at this piece, how can we create a transition that's maybe softer and allow what market forces are available for this to develop for the landowner to be able to do what they need to do. They came and pleaded with us, hey, we can't sell, we've been trying to sell this for years and no one can use a big, deep space like this. We need to look at some other potential ways to make it work. And so that's where the background maybe we've been in trying to address all the needs and the voices and the folks that are here, the folks that are coming. We had people come and say, hey, we've had residents in the community say, we want to see some places in Lindon that are high quality. And I think this, we've gone back and forth with the developer saying, bring us a high-end product that's going to have invested community members. It's not going to be rental stuff, like a big commercial, all rental apartments or anything like that. And this is, kind of a medium density potential. Do something nice that's going to have invested community members that are going to be a great part of the fabric of the community. And there's some housing that allows for those that can't afford the big half acres, but still are, or maybe they just they can't afford them. They're changing, stages of life. So that's sort of all the conversations that have gone about. Different commercial entities were proposed, and like has been mentioned, storage units using up the space. Well, some weren't comfortable with that. It's just tough. It's really tough because no matter how we slice it, there's going to be somewhere we're going to have to balance. And I think, I'm sorry, I wrote down your name. Is it Cole? Yeah, I think what Cole hit on, it really is, there's a pinch point with each voice here and each stakeholder, and trying to balance all those. We're doing our best, and we appreciate you coming out and sharing. And it makes my heart hurt to hear the different neighbors on these streets who really do care about one another, but they're saying, but my home has this impact, but yet I don't want to hurt the impact on my neighbor. And so, this is tremendous to hear all this, and it's been a long process, and we have a potential developer who's been trying to listen and be very transparent and meet with folks, and not everything they're presenting is something that I agree with or is reasonable, but they've been going through a lot of iterations, trying to respect that as well. So anyway, where I'm at, again, like Van, I'm very comfortable with the commercial part of this. I really like it. I think that part isn't, and I'm not hearing any pinch points or pain points on that. But some of the other things that are being brought up, I'm not sure tonight I'm ready to be up or down on this. I would like to, there's been a lot of suggestions in the room that I think are very interesting. I think a residential component is still probably the most likely outcome here, what that looks like versus saying, no, we're just going to keep it all commercial, this massive depth, because I don't think that's viable in the market now, probably. So what are some of those things we could do? I think we're getting really close. The suggestion of Alpine School District, whether their intentions with that property where they just kind of store buses, I would love for our staff maybe just to make a call and outreach to the Alpine Schools District and ask them, what are your intentions with that property? Is it long-term? Are you going to be coming to us and asking to develop it at some point? Because if that's the case, maybe a road there will be something that triggers. I don't know. Would love to just have that conversation. I liked that idea a lot. So the transition is the other thing I'm hearing that's still a pinch point, like how much we buffer these, the half-acre homes and going into the townhome product. That's something I want to kind of look at and discuss with my council members and staff and everyone, just a titch more. What's that right amount of buffer? I also want to ask staff, we just had some legislation come down from the state in this last legislative session. I would like to ask our city attorney, can we say that these cannot have accessory dwellings in these?
We can designate locations within the city that restrict that, but we have to specifically go through the process.
That is a concern I have. So people are mentioning they don't want to have increased traffic or too many people parking. We already have, accessory dwellings in the residential around. Could we explore that if we do this PRD overlay, that these specific townhomes would not have accessory dwellings in them? You have a question?
We certainly do that.
Okay.
And it makes sense, that's kind of what we've done down in Ivory, right, Mike? We don't allow accessory apartments
Right.
down in that
But I-
because of the density.
But I think we can limit, there's a 6,000 square foot lot
Right.
requirement
That's
too.
right, that's right as well.
Okay,
So,
that was just a concern I wanted to, so we just make sure these are single-family use, if these happen. And Mayor, did you still have your hand raised?
I was just gonna note that we can even add, we're comfortable adding that to our CCNRs, saying, you know, our covenants, that it's not allowed in the community. I mean,
Okay.
this is a way to be proactive to help you.
All right, very good, thank you. Yeah, and one other, I don't know if I have a pointer up here today. Does anyone have a pointer on their desk?
No.
I can just point to wherever you.
Just, and I don't know if this, you know, there's been some out-of-the-box ideas, but, you know, one thing is I'm hearing is that everyone feels like there's gonna be some traffic no matter what happens here, right? The data analysis was, commercial would be even more intense than this residential product, and some of you may not feel that's the reality. And it is hard. All of these are projections, right? These data points. But there will be some development and there will be traffic. That's just sort of an inevitable part of this. And so how that distributes fairly or evenly, or the burden is, we want to mitigate impact always. And so one thought, I don't know if this is completely crazy, but if some of the, if we were to approve the PRD overlay and have this residential component in there, and some of them were oriented to 570, their front was to 570 and their backs kind of, I don't have but you just had like a certain number, like say, I don't know, a dozen or 15 units all orient to 570. And that was their exclusive ingress, egress. And kind of divided up the community. And there would still be access, green space access for pedestrian and bicycle. I don't know, these are just some.
That was a plan that we had already presented that was.
There was some, well, there was just a cul-de-sac of just like 4 homes.
Hammerhead, coming in with a hammerhead on both ways.
Okay.
We have gone through that option.
Okay.
It was voted down.
So I'm just curious how people would feel about that if the community was somewhat, you know, you had certain homes just dedicated to 570, not the whole thing dedicated to 570. If that iteration could be revisited, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn the time over to Randy.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. You've expressed so many concerns and thoughts that I had as well. And Ben, to that, thank you also. To the point that you brought up, Carolyn, about the ADU or statutes that the state has recently put into place. If I remember listening to Cameron and his team at the Utah League of Cities and Towns at their most recent webinar, maybe Brian and staff could help flesh this out. I don't remember a square foot, but it did say that, I believe that they said that ones with homeowners associations could not preclude this happening. So I'm afraid of putting it even in the CCNRs would not help the situation. So that does concern me. But I do remember saying to the fact that it needed to be single family homes and that townhomes were excluded from that. Can staff elaborate on that?
Yeah, I believe it was. I believe it was 6,000 square foot lots and above.
Okay.
yeah, I believe that that's right. And I do think you're right that there were some restrictions on the CCNRs, but I don't remember the specifics of that, Randy.
Okay. And as far as what's the term? The homeowners associations, they cannot preclude those as well. Is that correct, Brian?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I
Okay.
think that that's right, but I don't remember that language specifically in the
So,
statute.
just a second, I think, Adam, do you have the,
So under the statute that passed, it says the state prohibited cities from prohibiting accessory dwelling units in certain residential areas, but it says it's a primary dwelling, a single-family dwelling, which is detached. So I don't think any of these attached units would qualify, therefore the city could prohibit ADUs in these.
All right, very
They have to
good.
be internal, correct? They have to be internal, no detached. And the only things I think that even might come into the realm of that are these single-family homes, these 4 that are being proposed would be the only ones that would possibly qualify for that. But it looks like there might be a size restriction on the lot size, so I appreciate that. Okay, so I have actually a kind of a long list to all those that are in attendance and all those who have shared their views and concerns. Thank you so much. I echo those who already have expressed that from the dais there. Appreciate all the time and energy you've taken over this many months and more than a year in being concerned about this. Kind of my background on this is that 27 years ago, I moved to Lindon, lived on 400 East at that time. 400 East did not go through. It was a nice quiet street, believe it or not, that did not pass through over what's now the Murdoch Canal Trail area into Pleasant Grove. When that opened up in the probably 97-ish, that became basically a thoroughfare for Pleasant Grove residents to get to work at either the old Word Perfect campus or to BYU, and it did become basically a thoroughfare, and traffic my life really wasn't ever the same. So I have a lot of empathy and understanding for what many of the residents here are going through. Additionally, in the late 90s, also 3 acres across the street from me was trying to be developed with the anticipation of 27 units, and some of it with underground parking, which was extremely out of the norm for Lindon in the late 90s. And so I went 2 years with pretty much the same situation that many of the residents in the room are dealing with. So again, a lot of empathy and understanding. We were able to, with a lot of help from the Planning Commission and the City Council at that time, tweak it very substantially to get it so that it was a handful of less than 10 units of townhomes, and then the other remaining half of that 3 acres was used for single-family half-acre lots. And so it was a great interaction between city officials and the local residents. And we hope that, I at least hope as an elected official, that you can understand that all those of us who are your elected officials here really take highly our responsibility to making sure that these type of projects are done in a way that is a cohesive enough experience for the residents and the businesses, that it's somehow a win-win if possible. So that's kind of my background, where I've come through, and I've expressed this to many of the residents that are who are there in their emails and communication one-on-one. So just know that I understand that. I also have a development background for both my family and our personal lives, and so I understand what it is that Amy and her team are bringing to this, and appreciate all their deep skill and passion for this particular project. I, like Van and Carolyn have expressed, I am fully on board and comfortable with the commercial portion of this project, and looking forward to that being a good thing for our community. Some of my biggest problems are, in no particular order, would be the parking on, if 570 were to go through. Any potential parking, no matter how much you structure it, there will be overflow. It's been expressed tonight. Will people actually park on 570? I will say adamantly, yes, they will. I've never seen a dense a development like on anything like this that has not spilled out onto the surrounding local existing or any surface roads. They always spill out. And short of putting out some sort of a no parking except by permit situation, there's no way that we can get around that. So there's one. I also think that, I'm not sure which citizen brought this up, but if we were to do this particular event, I love the idea, if we did this, to put a roundabout in front of 570. I think it's a way to, it's a perfect traffic calming measure. It might give a chance to pause and make a choice of which direction to go and not just create some sort of habitual pattern for people to exit or egress and enter this particular development. First of all, also additionally, I want to say I am not opposed to this particular amount of density to some degree. I have a huge amount of heartburn and regret, actually pretty much sick sometimes, about the unintended consequences of this particular overlay. I wish that I would have taken more care in making sure that the density was not at 10. I guess if I could have picked a number that would have set better with me, it would have been 8, but that is water under the bridge. But I just want to let you know that is something that I struggle with. I think part of that is with this particular parcel, the part that bothers me the most beyond the density is the actual impact it has onto the surrounding existing neighborhoods. These neighborhoods represent a quality of life that Lindon is the ultimate importance in Lindon. It is the epitome of what we are about, and the fact that it actually intrudes onto that is bothersome to me beyond words. I have lived in dense communities twice in my last 27 years of being a Lindon resident. Both were either building our new home or remodeling our past home. And I understand the dynamics and the demographics of the people who live in those particular type of units, and that that it's hard to get around. And the only accessing the getting in and out of these communities requires getting onto busy thoroughfares or like State Street and whatnot. I lived off of Geneva Road down close to where the new Orm Temple is going to be, and then also over at University Mall and the apartments there. And it's challenging. So I understand that it'd be nice to be able to have taken surface streets. And I think that for me, it's going to be a big draw. And so I understand what these residents are feeling. Let's see, where else am I thinking? Oh, one of the most important things is that Amy Oliver brought up, and this is, I'm so grateful she pointed this out, because this is something that is crucial to me, is page 57 of the packet. This particular rendition is, to me, an absolute proof that we can do this type of a density, service those who need this kind of a product, and at the same time not impact as heavily the surrounding quarter-acre lot or half-acre lots and the typical way of living in Lindon. We can do it with this. Now, with that being said, I'd also say I've always said this. I've never changed my position. With that model on 570, I would not allow access on that south end of the property to 500. I would still want all the access in and out of this project on State Street. I, again, appreciate Amy and all of the things that she has done on this particular project. But at the same time, I've always said that I wish that people can understand that I am only comfortable with this going in and out on State Street. And that's probably the biggest portion of what I have. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that's going to make me feel like I didn't do what I wanted to do. Nope, I think that's about it. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, first of all, when Mrs. Keith, is it? When you were up there, I maintained this from the beginning. And again, I don't know if this is going to change your mind. I know your minds are all made up, but in my experience in the development world, if you think 5 should be the density, then 10 is indeed high density. But the reality of the situation is in other, and I know we're Lindon, I understand that. I've lived in Lindon for 15 years. I love it. It's a wonderful community. But I called some of my compadres on the Orem Council, and they're talking 30, 40 units per acre, which simply means high-rise, which we are definitely against. And I've maintained this from the very beginning, since this conversation started. 10 units per acre is not high density. Again, I'm not trying to convince anyone different, other than the fact that in the development world, 10 units per acre is not high density. And you ask, why did we arrive at 10? Well, let's do a little history just quickly. If I remember, the initial requests were for 12 or 14 per acre. So the 10 really ends up being a compromise number, trying to get it down, because I don't think 12 or 14 was acceptable to anyone, for that matter. But again, trying to balance that between what's going to be economically feasible for the developer and what's going to be acceptable or palatable to the neighborhood. Here's a question I have for you, Mike. Right now, we're only talking about putting the street through 570. We're not talking about the zone change. That's the next item. Is that correct? We're talking about a general plan amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like that we could probably have 10 more of these meetings, and I feel like we would probably hear, and we'd be willing to do it, but we would probably hear the same concerns and the same issues echoed over and over and over again. And that's okay, but in my mind, it serves no more useful purpose unless someone comes up with something new that we can really sink our teeth into. So here's my question. Can we forego right now until some other, as Carolyn mentioned, some other options for 570? Maybe it's a roundabout. I don't think it's fair to the developer and the landowners to keep putting off the zone change. Can we do the zone change with the idea that we could come back later and amend the general overlay, or the street plan, amend the street plan? Because right now, if I understand it correctly, they have clients ready and willing and able to go to start construction on the commercial portion of the project. But until they get the zone change, nobody in their right mind, including the developer, is going to start shelling out money and making plans and making announcements and things like that that may or may not bring other potential clients into the project. So my question is, can we, if we want to set this aside and discuss it again on whether 570 goes through or not, so be it. But can we make the zone change with the idea that during the site plan approval and some of the other get into the weeds issues that you folks get into, can we make the zone change and then come back to the road consideration?
I mean, I guess my only concern is, you're not going to see site plan approval. That's only planning commission.
Right.
And it probably does affect how they are going to do their engineering and, their future subdivision plans and things. So I think they probably want to do those simultaneously, site plan and subdivision at the same time.
Yeah, I just honestly, I mean, I'm being candid. I feel like, this has been a year, and if it takes a year, it takes a year. But, I'm setting myself up here, but I guess I call it paralysis through analysis. I mean, if we try to anticipate every possible contingency, that's why you have, in my opinion, that's why you have zoning ordinances, and that's why you have rules and regulations to do your rock bottom best to prevent all of these issues that have been brought up over the last year. You do everything you can to mitigate the parking, you do everything you can to mitigate the noise, the lighting, put up a 7-foot fence, you do landscaping. I mean, I think that my personal opinion is that we've pretty much done everything. Well, it wouldn't be fair to say everything, but I certainly think the issue has been debated and discussed enough. If there is a way that we could allow them to go ahead and talk to their clients and their builders and so forth to at least have an idea of what they can and when they can do it. That's all.
Good comment. Was there something you wanted to add, Brian?
Well, I was just gonna say that Mike, we have to remember that in our ordinance, when we drafted it, we specifically require a site plan to accompany the zone change. And if we separate those
And
two,
that was my
then
question. I couldn't
that's the
remember if that
concern
was the case or not.
Yeah,
so.
that's kind of what I was thinking as
Okay,
well,
all
so.
right.
Mayor, can I bring up one item with parking?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we will allow parking on one side of the street as well. So this, where it says Elwood Place here, that north side of the street, you could have parallel parking along there. You could have parallel parking down what they're calling 375 West. You could have a little bit here. You couldn't have any in front of a townhome, but there are spaces as well where you could fit quite a bit of parallel parking for on street for overflow.
And let me rephrase my question, and I promise this will be the end of it. If we went ahead and passed the zone change, we would still have some control, would we not, in the site plan and the development plan? We would still have some alternatives. I mean, the planning commission could still decide whether they want 570 to go through, and I understand what you're saying, but the planning commission has the ability to put the brakes on if they don't like what they're seeing, and certainly they could communicate with the council. Maybe even the council could attend the meeting that night, where they present their site plan and so forth. I'm thinking out loud here.
Didn't the planning commission approve that?
They gave a recommendation.
Yeah.
It was denied. The recommendation was denial.
For 570.
For 570,
Yeah.
for this street plan.
For 570 to be
It was for
To be
To be
closed.
closed is being
Okay.
denied. They recommended it go through.
Close.
They recommended this.
This,
Yeah,
well,
this
they
one.
haven't seen, this was presented by,
No,
they did see
no,
this
they-
one?
They did not.
This
So
is a
they
newer
saw one
version.
just slightly different. They,
Not this
Yeah,
exact
it's
one.
exact
yeah,
one.
it was, I've got it here. So
So,
they saw this one that had two larger lots here. So what they've done is moved these, 4 units over to this area. And then that's where they've created the open space. So very similar.
yeah, minor adjustments,
Could
so.
I just make just a brief comment? Sure. You've got all our notes and all our comments. That was one of our big concerns, is that buffer, if that opens up that buffering that goes into the residential, into the townhomes. And that was reduced significantly with this plan. That was and that was a concern and is still a concern. Instead of it reducing a couple of units and increasing that buffer, it's been decreased.
Yeah,
So that's the biggest concern.
which was mentioned. I mean, it's not like it's, yeah, but thank you for pointing that out. So council, we've had the public comment.
Well, just to your point, one point I brought up on the planning commission is once the zone is approved, anything that the planning commission does is totally administrative. So then all we're doing is comparing it against the ordinance.
That's right.
We can't then say close or open a road or any plan they bring. That's why the ordinance is so specific. You have to put a site plan with the zone change so that when it comes back to us, we have something to go off of. Otherwise, anything that meets the parameters, any of these plans, they could bring to us.
You would be hard pressed to deny it.
We would be very hard pressed.
Yeah, and I understand. I guess what I'm saying is just in the spirit of trying to.
Well, that's why we get to
We need to do the heavy
make a
lifting
motion and
all at
see if
once.
it carries, and then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good
that's
idea.
kind of where the action is tonight.
So to Carolyn's point on that road going through the Alpine School District, I'd asked that and talked with Mike today. That's an intriguing one. I'm not hopeful, but I think it's worth a question for certain.
Oh, yeah.
What their intentions are with the property.
Short term, long term, yeah. So do you want to make a motion or propose some kind of action tonight and see if there's support for it?
I don't have the ordinance information in front of me to make the motion. Does someone have that handy? Do you have that handy, Van?
He's got it there.
I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 2021-4-0, adopting the general plan amendment as completed, or excuse me, as presented.
So you want to close 570?
No, I'm sorry, deny. Yeah, I want 570 to go through. So deny, thank you. I move to deny ordinance 2021-4-0, adopting the general plan amendment as presented. Thank you, Ben.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Statutorily, I don't know how long I have to wait. So.
I'd say about 9 o'clock would be about right.
Randy, Carolyn, Van?
Well, I'm just going to bring more discussion in, sorry. To me, there's kind of a domino effect that starts to go. Because I'm a no on the next item. So that kind of really impacts how, I don't know how to respond to this part here. Depending on how votes go, then you're trying to then fight for best case scenarios. It depends what happens in the zoning.
Well, if we, yeah. If this is denied, I'm not sure that it doesn't begat the other. I mean, that's still a discussion area, and we may decide that we're not comfortable with it, so. At least that's how I see it. I mean, Mike?
That's correct. I mean, is there things, Commissioner or Councilman Broderick, that you'd like to see that the developer, if you want to give them feedback and bring back their plan that maybe you're more comfortable with?
Well, to me, it's on the traffic. Let's suppose it did get voted for, even though I voted no. And it did go. Then I'm looking to see the traffic pattern. And then I start to think maybe that Alpine School District Road, just to use that term for it, becomes a good option. That place where you stay on State Street and avoid those, becomes a decent option as well.
I know the fire department's probably going to want 2 accesses into the development, so I'm not sure just an access on State Street
will be sufficient.
It's 2 accesses.
Yeah, we'd have to see how they design that.
I think maybe we need to continue.
That's an option.
Continue these.
I mean, right now, I don't have a second on the motion, so.
I'm not ready to, I think there's still a few points to tweak still on this. I don't want to see the whole, all the commercial options go away because we're not working with this and finding, the sweet spot that makes it work. But I'm not sure it's right now with what we're looking at right now. I think I'm more, Randy, are you there?
And if you could provide some specific feedback on that.
Yeah, I think one thing that was addressed by the Planning Commission that I'm hearing from all of them is they really wanted to see just a few less units. It feels like we're still seeing proposals that always max the units. And, they take away one thing to continue to keep that max. And if they just would give up a couple units, we could still have some open space for this, amenities. We could still have a better buffer. And I think, the market housing is doing fantastic right now. People are going to want to pay, the quality of what I think is going to be presented here and living in our community. I think it's still going to pencil out if we shave off a couple units. I don't think that's too much to ask to kind of make this overlay is tough. I mean, this is a new way to look at these lots in Lindon on these commercial lots that have this unusual depth that we were trying to figure out what to do with them. So I would like to see a little bit more there
We
too.
went from 96 to down to 72, is that right?
And we didn't complain about the Lindon nursery density at all.
They haven't been approved yet. We're still waiting.
Got their overlay approved.
Again, a little bit different. They
Little
don't,
bit
they don't
different.
connect to a single-family
Neighborhood and-
neighborhood.
And the
So-
overall acreage is a little more here too for the potential residential.
So with what I'm hearing, I would say the.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Randy. I didn't hear you yet.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna, just weigh in on the fact that, yeah, if this were to go through for a vote tonight, it would be a deny for me. So a continuance would be the best outcome, I think, for this. My feedback I would give is the density, while important to me, the most important thing to me is the traffic pattern and of the avoidance of the existent surface streets. So, but I've made that clear for all this time, so thank you.
So I will declare that the motion lacking a second dies because.
Lack of a second.
So someone want to step forward and
I will
make a motion to
Mayor,
continue, I assume?
I'd like to motion to continue ordinance 2021-4-0 and its subsequent 2021-3-0 to be continued.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Do we automatically put those in both the same motion?
These are two separate agendas.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I retract.
So is there any-
Motion 2021-4-0 to be continued.
Okay. Is there further discussion on that? I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor?
A second officially? with
Yes.
the-
Randy did.
Randy
to
did,
clarify
second.
after the agenda.
Yeah, she did. So I call for the vote. All in favor? To continue?
Aye.
I heard two ayes. Is there a third? All,
I said aye.
okay, we have three. Is there anyone who opposes it?
I
Okay.
do.
So that motion carries 3-1 for a continuance. There we are. Okay. Item number 9 is the next item. It's a public hearing. We need to open a public hearing. Someone want to do that?
I make a motion to open a public hearing.
Van, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Van, a second by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in a public hearing on zone change amendment ordinance 2021-3-0. We've kind of discussed it already.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Quick call.
I will motion, Mayor, to continue ordinance 2021-3-0.
Well, let's,
Motion to
wait just a second. We need to
sorry.
close
Do we
the
have-
public hearing.
we
Is
have
there
to
any
close the
public
pub-
comment different than what we've already heard?
That's right, sorry, out of order.
No, you're okay.
Could I ask for just so I know what to come back to on the continuous, some feedback as far as?
I think maybe what we can do is if we're good, council, let's go ahead, other than that public comment, we can articulate that when we're done with the continuance. Is that fair? Would you be kind enough to, council? I mean, the Alpine School District, we want to check that out.
Yes.
The buffer zone, I think, is one as well. More green space, I think that I heard that
We'll
said.
maintain a green space
Yeah.
area, yeah.
Those are three
Not-
items.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Randy.
are we doing this as part of the public hearing, or do we need to close that?
Well, we're going to
portion?
close it. We're going to close it.
Okay, just, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Lichty has a comment.
So the one thing that was asked to consider was two entrances going out to State Street. So that's some feedback for the developer to have them look at that.
Yeah, we, that, I
UDOT
know they kind of
owns
restrict
the
how many
road.
entrances on that, so that, but maybe we get confirmation, some indication that that's not an option.
Maybe somebody needs to look into it a little bit, the traffic situation, if they're going to be developing the Lindon Nursery across the street too, the combination of the two, what kind of an impact that's gonna have, you know, rather than separating them, you know, that's something that needs to be considered.
Good comment. Okay. Any other additional comment?
Sorry, just one question.
It's all right.
So Randy, which office is responsible to determine the viability of developments just as far as like water? Because I got freaked out when I got the text saying like, don't, the culinary waters, we're running short on it. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, if it's running short now, it's not going to get any better. So
No.
is that part of an analysis that we could see?
Yeah, the culinary water, I think we're fine. We had a couple of pumps that were going through repairs.
Okay.
And it's starting to warm up, and the secondary isn't online, so that was the nature of that, just to kind of buy us a little bit more time before we got those pumps
So
back.
it's a mechanical issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, yes. Okay, we're gonna opt to close the public hearing if someone wants to make the yes.
Can we maybe ask the developer if it's a possibility for her, like, is she willing to go how far down in density? I mean, are we
That looks like.
That reminds
Amy.
They keep going back and forth is why I can't bring that up.
The great point. It's kind of like that Smith's ad, you know, low, 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 low. You know, they keep going down. So I don't know. That's.
We've been, you know, so we're gonna postpone it, but then, or continue it.
Well,
road
there are
situation.
specific things that I believe the council is they've articulated that they would like some additional information that's outside of what has been done up to this point. If there are other points, I think as a developer, you would welcome any of that feedback. It doesn't have to be done here in the public meeting. You can address those directly to her. I think she's been more than amenable to try to do what she can to make it workable. So,
Mayor, I just, one thought. I'm a little troubled when I hear comments like, well, they're just submitting a plan that meets the bare minimum of the zone requirements. Well, how many of us, when we go to build a home and we get permission to build that home just for fun, we want to tack on another $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 just because someone has an opinion? I mean, that's what the zoning ordinance is. That's what the design standards are. They're a standard, and if they're met, I mean, if they're to be exceeded, I think that's something that the developer needs to decide in consultation with, you know, the city and stuff. But as far as the zone itself, I don't see us selling out in any way. I don't see us compromising in any way. I mean, we've studied this zone until we could study it some more. I know that. But just, it troubles me to hear comments, not from the audience, but from others too, that, well, you know, what developers do is they just present the bare minimum that they can get by with to meet the zoning requirements or to meet the development standards. Well, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, why, I just say, in your personal life, would you volunteer to do something way over and above that's gonna cost you a chunk of change? I don't think so. That's my comment.
okay, we ready to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. I love you, Mike.
Thank you. I love you too.
And I think you bring a good perspective to all of this. We need to hear all the different balance things. But I do want to also say this is a new overlay ordinance zone that we are opening up in Lindon. And so there's just been a lot more going into this to really try to understand what is going to be the reality and how to make this best work. And so I think it's okay to take the time we need to hear our residents.
Yep.
And for councils and staff and planning commission to work through it, because this is something that's not a vested right in this property yet to get to do. We're going to be doing a zone change. So I think taking the time, asking the questions, working with the developer who I need to give her some props because she has been patient. And we need to weigh in those concerns that Mike's mentioning, all those elements. I think we're doing the right thing by continuing this tonight and not rushing just yet. But yet I agree with you, we can't belabor it. We can't just never make a decision. I think we need to get there soon, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready to close the public hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. And to your comment, Mike, and we all love everybody here, everybody. I don't care which side of this issue you're on. That's the beauty of living here, to have that open freedom, to have that discussion. And I would hope that you would never feel discouraged or feel unlistened to or feel threatened in any way that you can't voice your opinion. As I serve as mayor, that's one of the primary goals that I've set for myself, is to make sure everyone has a voice, and that that discussion takes place and is done in an unthreatening way. It's critical because it's not easy to come before a council. I mean, we're residents just like you. We're human beings, and yet there's this feeling that, well, we're in charge. Well, we're really not in charge. We're here to represent you. And so I hope that we always espouse that kind of feeling as we deal with each other. And Mike, you made the comment that developers won't do more than they need to do. I've done a little bit of development, and I'm probably weird, but I wanted to live where I developed. And the contractors that came said, well, you don't want to do that. And I said, well, why wouldn't I want to do that? He says, because when there are problems, they're going to come to you, and they're going to complain. And I said, well, what are the problems? Can't we fix them? They said, the roads, you got to put more road base in. I said, well, let's put more road base in. I mean, there are ways that I think the developers, and I think Amy, she's proven this, that she's trying to produce a product that not only is she going to be able to feel good about, but I think all of us will feel like there's been some give and take, and her desire is not necessarily to just come and develop and leave. It's to have a product or an offering that we can live with and enjoy. So that's where we are. So a motion be in order to, I assume.
Well, let me just
continue.
say for the record, I agree with everything that the mayor said, but I also would appreciate the right to express my opinion too, if that makes sense. I mean, we need to listen. I agree. If we have to do this for another year, I won't be happy, but we'll do it. But I still reserve the right to express my opinion and have that respected, whether you vote for it or not. So, thank you.
Which you have.
Yeah, I have.
So we're good.
Okay.
I agree with all of it. We can disagree without being disagreeable
right.
is the goal.
That's what we love about serving here.
Absolutely.
We have a different tenor in our meetings.
And when
than
that
other
changes,
cities do.
I'm out of here.
No need for it.
Okay, a motion be in order to continue, I believe.
All right. I'll motion to continue ordinance 2021-3-0.
Is there a second? Randy, you with us?
I am.
So we have a motion on the table to continue. Do we want to do that? Quiet.
Clarification with our staff is that if we approve the zone change tonight, we do not have as much leeway to do some of the additional questions that we've brought up tonight, that it's sort of a 1-2, they're sort of combined together is what I understood. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct. So failing to have a second on that motion,
I'll make a secondary motion if you want.
I'm about ready to say, going once, going twice, the motion dies. Is there a substitute or a different motion?
I will make one. I move to deny ordinance 2021-3-0.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Van, a second by Randy. Further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Just a moment. Can I
Yes,
ask?
give us some time.
I'm trying to understand the technicalities and the process here, what we're voting on here, the process, before I give my vote. So the Planning Commission recommended approval on this. This was not the item that they recommended denial.
That's correct.
All right. And so what I want to ask my fellow council members, are you saying you want this all to stay commercial and not consider a residential overlay at all at any point? Or is the residential overlay as it's presented now needing some additional work? Is that too much to ask? Am I out of order?
I'm
to
seeing as
ask
it's
that?
presented as too much density for me in this area, and the impact is too great on the neighboring neighborhoods. That's a lot of neighbors in there.
I mean,
And I think just one thing from process too, if you deny the zone change, the developer cannot, the developer cannot reapply for 6 months, I believe, under our ordinance.
We have a lack of options.
I can get,
Go ahead, Randy.
and my answer to Kellen's question would be the fact that similar to Van's, maybe a little bit different. It's not the density again as much for me, but it is the impact of the density on the neighboring neighbors that bothers me. So it's the density as it affects hitting the surface streets going to the east and to the south. So, well, and to the north. But I just feel like it's the density that affects the neighboring neighbors that bothers me, not the density itself.
well,
No, we've got to kind of resolve what we're going to do here, so.
Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Carolyn.
All right.
So right now, we have a 2-2 vote, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct. And that goes to the
Are we
mayor now.
closed to further, shall we
No.
have further discussion?
Let's go ahead and have more discussion.
All right, so we have an adopted ordinance that was fleshed out, and I understand that, I also have a little heartburn that the quantity of units that can be placed on this because of the amount of acreage that's behind the 300-foot, is not
Yeah,
sorry,
we're
we have-
checking with our legal
but
counsel
we
here
need-
now.
But,
That it's
at this
possible to
point-
be adopted. It doesn't
it's
have to
possible
be.
right.
Yep.
So there are elements to this. I guess there's pros and cons either way you go. The developer has gone down this road with us at this length. I would hate to have her have to now postpone all those commercial entities that she has NDAs with.
Sure.
They're going to go away, most likely, and go somewhere else, another city potentially. We have a user now, Low Book Sales, that's part of this as well. And I think they're a business that we appreciate having in our city, and I think we still have more to work with here than to just flat out deny.
Is there a way to
and
make the
create that
commercial
barrier.
portion go? The commercial portion.
Oh, I see.
Yes, but I think, I think the whole intent was to try and figure out what to do with a parcel that's 1,000 feet deep.
Yeah, and that was why it was tied
Mm-hmm.
jointly, so that could be figured out before anything was moved forward, so.
Mayor?
So, yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments at this point. I'd like to also point out at this stage that I am in high favor of Low Book Sales, Rhino Realty, being able to, in some way, if we can, to try to go forward with them. I'd like to see them be able to have their ability to expand. Back to my one of my key points was that on page 57 of our packet, figure 1-2, the site plan with the cul-de-sac at the back with the 5 or 4 lots. And it just is again proof that we can do this in a way that does not affect the same degree the neighboring neighbors to this particular project. And so I mean, if we could take a different view of that, this is one of the rare site plans that have tried to accomplish a possible solution for this. So, but at this point, I'd have to say that I cannot continue. I would like to, but I cannot continue when the focus has been so heavily to have it so heavily impact these other streets.
So here's a question, Randy and Van.
So I can still listen to what they're saying.
Would, out of respect to the developer who's spent a great deal of time and effort, would it be possible to, and I'm not saying we need to do this, I'm fine with whatever the council decides, but to give them, rather than mandate at least 6 months before they could come back, would it be appropriate to give them one more opportunity based upon the feedback?
Yes, absolutely. I'm okay with continuing.
Yes.
But they got to get to a.
Yes.
My point is, though, it's like they realize by not continue it, or if, the 6 months they can't come back, give them one more shot to make it happen.
Mayor, to that point, I can endorse a continuance. What I just don't want to be held, me personally, I don't want to be held hostage by the fact that we've got wonderful potential business entities that want to come and locate this under the pretext of we have to then approve this whatever site plan that is chosen in order to accommodate the acquire of these new businesses. So that's just where I stand.
That's a valid point. So having said that, I mean, I'm just trying to get the council to get to a point that, you know, it's fine if we decide not to continue it, but give it that option that at least gives the developer one more opportunity before it's 6 months before they can do anything.
Yes,
and they may not step up and do anything different. So, anyway. So having said that.
Yes, I am open to that for sure. But I will just openly say that the residential side of that's got to be pretty different.
On that, yeah. So legal, are we okay with that?
Yeah, continuing, we've been in a little discussion. So is that where we're kind of going towards?
I think that's where I'm trying to get us to,
Well, we had
at
a
least give. It's a 2-2.
Aye and 2 nay.
So you can take a revote, that's no problem at all here.
Okay, guess what? I vote, because I can vote when there's a tie. I'll vote to continue. That way we don't have to go through all the machinations that, so that motion carries to continue it. But I think you've heard a lot of feedback tonight, so that buys you a little bit of time.
We actually, well.
Yeah, we have to have another motion, don't we?
We'll have to have another motion because my motion failed. Mine failed to continue.
Right.
That's right.
Van's motion that we lost.
So the mayor has to vote against us and then we go for a third try.
Gotcha. Yep, you're right.
So Mayor, you'll have to vote nay.
So I will officially do it. I move to continue ordinance 2021-3-0.
That's a friendly amendment to the
I will
amendment.
second that.
Second by Randy, and I'll call any further discussion. We've had plenty of it tonight. Not that we won't have more in the future, but call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Mayor doesn't get the vote, so there you go. Thank you for being here this evening, and I hope we get to a better place. I hope we get somewhere where all of us can kind of feel good about things, so thank you. Okay, next on our agenda.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Randy, a second by Carolyn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You think for 1 minute the school district's gonna?
I think it's worth.
Selling trucks, cars.
Thank you, everybody.
As do I. But I certainly
Again, I don't think it's high. Oh, that would be optimistic. They're remarkably unresponsive.
We had few townhouses and single family. Just oriented, it was like.
I would would just check with
Yes.
Mike, and I'm sure he can forward that to us. That's all I.
Yep, I'll see you
go
Friday.
through him.
Thanks so much,
Get
Adam.
to us and
Okay,
just
bye-bye.
say,
I was unclear on where I need to be.
I know.
See, and for me, that's not the end-all, break-all.
And I think that'd be helpful. I reading the council, I think